Chapter 374. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. Gu Jiao played chess with the old beggar for a while, and then left. Of course, she didn't forget to take the gold ingots and work fees she earned. However, she still had some conscience and left the copper coins and silver pieces for the old beggar. It was still early, so Gu Jiao went to the Hanlin Academy. She originally planned to wait for Xiao Lulang to finish his duty, but after asking the Hanlin Academy's Kong Mu, she learned that Xiao Lulang went to the countryside again. However, this time he didn't go far. He was in the capital and could come back at night. Thank you. Gu Jiao thanked him politely and turned to leave the Hanlin Academy. Little Jing Kong was going to play at Su Kanji's house today. She had already informed them in the morning, so she didn't need to pick him up at the Imperial College. The Su family would send him back to the medical center in the evening. Gu Jiao decided to go directly to the medical center. However, even Gu Jiao didn't expect that she would encounter some hooligans on the way back to the medical center. Gu Jiao was puzzled. There was still a long way to go before the new year. Were they open for business so early? There were a total of 6 hooligans. Judging from their clothes, they looked like bandits and refugees. However, they were strong, and they looked like they were holding knives and swords. They should have some martial arts foundation. They covered their faces with cloth and stared at her covetously. Gu Jiao thought for a while and asked, "Robbery?" With her current appearance, she couldn't be robbing, right? However, it was hard to say. Some men wouldn't care so much if they didn't have sex for a long time. Sigh. Gu Jiao wasn't interested. Gu Jiao turned and left. She didn't even want to fight. Stop. The leader of the hooligans shouted. Gu Jiao stopped, and the result was that the hooligans were beaten black and blue. They were crying for their parents. Gu Jiao didn't bother to report it to the authorities. With their current miserable state, it wouldn't take long for the nearby officials to be alerted, so she didn't have to do anything. Gu Jiao flicked his wide sleeves and walked back to the clinic. The reason why she chose to walk was not because she was idle, nor was it because she was distressed about the cost of hiring a carriage. It was purely because she wanted to observe the shops along the street. On the way back to the clinic, they didn't encounter any more trouble. "Xiaogu, you're back." It was the second master. The business of the medical hall had improved a lot, and the orders of the pharmaceutical factory had also increased. In addition to making their own brand of medicine for wounds, Huichun Hall also made some pills that could replenish qi and blood. The second boss was so busy that he rarely bumped into Gu Jiao. "Uncle Hu." Gu Jiao greeted him. "What's the good news today?" Second boss smiled mysteriously. "Let me show you something." "What?" Gu Jiao asked. "This." The second boss took out a dazzling golden invitation from his chest. "This is something that I fought for with great difficulty. Originally, our Miracle Hand Hall had just opened and didn't have the qualifications to participate in this kind of gathering. But who told me to be so amazing?" Gu Jiao still didn't understand. Thus, the second boss explained to her, and Gu Jiao finally understood. This was actually a meeting organized by the capital's Chamber of Commerce. Although the Miracle Hand Hall was a medical hall, it wasn't a welfare organization of the imperial court, so it still had the qualifications to join the Chamber of Commerce. In the Chamber of Commerce, one could seek more opportunities for development and cooperation with partners. There were official members and unofficial members. The second boss had indeed spent a lot of effort to obtain the invitation to the Chamber of Commerce. The date was next month. He also didn't expect to become an official member of the Chamber of Commerce immediately. After all, Huichun Hall had joined the ranks of the Chamber of Commerce several years ago. The first time is unfamiliar, the second time is familiar. This time we're mainly going to broaden our horizons. What do you think? The second boss asked. Okay. Gu Jiao didn't have any objections. When it came to business, she wholeheartedly trusted the second boss. It had to be said that this feeling of being trusted was very good. The second boss smiled and said, "Then I'll go arrange it. Remember to clear out these few days." Gu Jiao nodded in response. Alright, you go do your work. Aya. The second boss suddenly looked at Gu Jiao's sleeve and loudly shouted, "You're injured." His shout was very loud, and the entire hall heard it. Even Eunuch Wei, who had just gotten out of the carriage, heard it. What happened? What happened? Who's injured? Is Miss Gu injured? Eunuch Wei anxiously ran inside and came to Gu Jiao's side. Gu Jiao lifted the sleeve that the second boss was looking at. There were indeed a few drops of blood on it, but she wasn't injured. She must have accidentally rubbed the other party's blood on her clothes when she was dealing with that group of ruffians. It's not mine, Gu Jiao said. Then what's up with the blood? Eunuch Wei pointed at her sleeve and asked worriedly. Gu Jiao made a no sound. I just ran into a few ruffians and taught them a lesson. Eunuch Wei was still worried, so he pulled Gu Jiao's wrist and used his body to block everyone else's view. He rolled up her sleeve and carefully examined it. After confirming that there were no wounds or bruises, Eunuch Wei finally let out a long sigh of relief. He helped Gu Jiao pull up her sleeve. He was a eunuch and didn't have too many barriers between men and women, but he still didn't want others to see Gu Jiao's arm in public. Eunuch Wei, why are you here? Gu Jiao asked. Eunuch Wei said, His Majesty had this servant come. His Majesty wasn't in a good mood earlier in the palace, and didn't pay attention to Miss Gu. After His Majesty calmed down, he felt apologetic and ordered the imperial kitchen to make some of Miss Gu's favorite snacks. He was talking about what happened in the morning. The emperor misunderstood that Grand Concubine Jing had pushed Eunuch Wei. He was furious and had mixed feelings as he turned to enter the study. After being poisoned by the black medicine, only the bad side of that person's memory would be left. Gu Jiao was still the little miracle doctor that the emperor thought highly of. Gu Jiao accepted the snacks. Eunuch Wei returned to the palace to report and told the emperor about the attack on Gu Jiao. It was just a few ruffians. Miss Gu wasn't hurt. Ruffians of this level were most likely ruffians in the capital. It wasn't likely that they were sent by some big shot to assassinate Gu Jiao. After all, they were too weak and couldn't do any harm to Gu Jiao. However, the emperor didn't know why, but a figure suddenly appeared in his mind and couldn't be erased. A terrifying thought surged into his mind, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. Reason told him that it was impossible, but the more he thought about it, the more that thought magnified in his mind. In the end, it was as if he had been possessed, and he firmly believed in this conjecture. He slammed the booklet in his hand on the table, and went to the nunnery with a cold face. It was evening, and all the palaces had begun to have their meals. It was also dinner time in the nunnery. Green smoke was rising from the chimney of the small kitchen, adding to the atmosphere of the common people among the pavilions and terraces. The setting sun should have been a very warm scene. However, the emperor's heart was cold. Your Majesty? The little nun, Huiyan, who was sweeping the courtyard, saw the emperor. Her eyes sparkled as she put down the broom and bowed. The emperor didn't even look at her as he went to Grand Concubine Jing's small temple, with a cold expression. Grand Concubine Jing wasn't in the temple, but in the meditation room next door. She was sitting on the polished wooden floor with a small table in front of her. There were a few bottles and a few fresh ingredients on the table. She was using a pestle and mortar to make something in a small jar in her arms. Her left thumb was wrapped in a white gauze, and her forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. It could be seen that she was working very hard at it. Granny Kai stayed by her side and helped her. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps was heard. Granny Kai paused in her cutting of the taro and looked at Grand Concubine Jing beside her. Grand Concubine Jing lowered her head and ate the mashed taro, as if she hadn't heard the commotion outside. Granny Kai gently placed the knife and taro on the table, intending to go over and see what was going on. She had just stood up when the emperor entered the room. He left his shoes outside the door. Granny Kai bowed. Your Majesty. Grand Concubine Jing seemed to have finally realized that someone had come. She calmly raised her head with a gentle gaze, but there was also a hint of melancholy in her eyes. She only glanced at the emperor without saying anything, and then lowered her head to continue eating the mashed taro. You're dismissed, the emperor coldly said to Granny Kai. Granny Kai turned her head and looked at Grand Concubine Jing, who didn't say anything. She lowered her head and said, Yes, this servant will take her leave. Granny Kai got up and left the room. The emperor knew that she hadn't gone far and was probably listening at the door, but he didn't care that much. He suddenly sat down in front of Grand Concubine Jing and looked at the face that he had missed day and night. He said with a pained voice, "Why did you do this, mother?" Grand Concubine Jing stopped eating the mashed taro. She held the jar in one hand and the pestle and mortar in the other. Her eyes were full of confusion. What did I do? The emperor stared at Grand Concubine Jing without blinking, and his hands on his knees slowly clenched. Mother, don't play the fool anymore. There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. Mother, you know very well what you did. I know very well what I did. Your Majesty, if you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Grand Concubine Jing said indifferently as she angrily threw the pestle and mortar into the jar. She then placed the jar on the table indifferently. There wasn't a trace of guilt on her face, so logically speaking, she really shouldn't have done anything. However, the emperor's suspicions were like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. They had grown on the way here, and had grown even more when he saw her in person. The emperor said seriously, "Very well. If mother wants to hear it, then I'll tell you. The young divine doctor was attacked today and almost got injured. If it wasn't for her quick wits and skills, she would have been killed." Grand Concubine Jing was surprised. "So your Majesty believes that I was the one who instigated this? Wasn't that the case?" the emperor asked with gritted teeth. "Why would I do that?" Grand Concubine Jing asked. The emperor sneered. "Why? I want to ask you why, mother. Is it that as long as it's someone Zhen likes, Imperial Mother will drive them away from Zhen's side? You used to be Mother Zhuang, and now you're the young divine doctor. In Mother's heart, I can't get close to anyone other than you." Grand Concubine Jing suddenly raised her voice. "I've never thought of it that way." The emperor's lips curled up in a mocking smile. "Is that so? Then why did Mother stop me from seeing Mother? When did I?" Grand Concubine Jing paused mid-sentence. The emperor looked at her coldly. "Mother, you remember now, don't you? To be honest, I've forgotten about it as well, but I suddenly remembered it a few days ago. Ningen and I secretly went to the cold palace to visit Mother, and she punished us by making us kneel in the snow for an entire night. Ningen fell seriously ill because of it." Grand Concubine Jing closed her eyes and explained patiently, "That's because I didn't want noble consort Lu to have something on me. The Empress didn't want you to visit her in the cold palace either. She didn't want to implicate you, and neither did I. The son was hurt, and the mother was hurt. How could I not feel bad when you were kneeling in the snow?" The emperor said indifferently, "Is that so? I don't remember Mother feeling bad at all." Grand Concubine Jing clenched her fists. Outside the room, Granny Kai was so anxious that she felt suffocated. She knew the situation at the time. Grand Concubine Jing punished His Majesty, and Ningen while tears welled up in her eyes. Anyone could tell that she couldn't bear it. Yet, the emperor said that he didn't remember. That pill, it must be that pill. "Whatever you say, Your Majesty." Grand Concubine Jing lowered her eyes, her expression and tone filled with hurt. "Your Majesty." Granny Kai couldn't help but walk in and kneel. Grand Concubine wouldn't do that. She's someone who can't even bear to step on an ant. Why would she send someone to assassinate Miss Gu? Endless mockery flashed through the emperor's eyes. Can't even bear to step on an ant? Then who was it that beat my fucking to death back then? Grand Concubine Jing's pupils shrank. "What did you say?" The emperor said coldly. "I said Mother beat my fucking to death." Fucking was a name so long ago that no one in the palace remembered his existence. He was the one who served the emperor when he was young. After his death, the emperor had eunuch Wei by his side. However, fucking was bribed by noble consort Lu to frame the emperor several times. Even death couldn't wipe out his crimes. Moreover, it wasn't Grand Concubine Jing who ordered him to be beaten to death. It was the virtuous Empress Zhuang Jin's. All of you look carefully. This is the consequence of betraying your master for glory. Your Majesty. Your Majesty, please save this servant. This servant knows her mistake. Mother. Execute her. It was Zhuang Jin's who did it, so why was she blamed? Grand Concubine Jing's hands clenched into fists. She was using so much force that her knuckles turned white. Granny Kai choked. "No, Your Majesty. It wasn't Grand Concubine." The emperor didn't look at Nanny Kai at all. Instead, he stared at Concubine Jing with blazing eyes. "Fine. How many sleepless nights must Zhuang Jins have had where she could only lick her wounds in the dark? She might have been in pain, cried and torn apart, but she wouldn't let anyone see her weakness. She was no longer the Zhuang Jins of the past from the moment she turned the late emperor's harem into her own. Grand Concubine Jing returned to her room and took out the imperial edict. Granny Kai's expression changed. "Your Highness, what are you doing? Don't be rash. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896422826/111128876. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion mobile reading website. Chapter 375. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. Grand Concubine Jing gripped the imperial edict with a cold expression. Granny Kai grabbed her arm and dropped to her knees. She was so scared that her face turned pale, and her voice trembled. "Your Highness, I'm on my knees. Please don't be impulsive. His Majesty is just momentarily blinded. Wait a while. His Majesty will be fine after a while." Naturally, this was just a consolation, but Granny Kai couldn't think of any other way. "I'm begging you, please put the imperial edict back. Please put it back. You don't only have His Majesty. You still have Princess Ning'an. Please don't be impulsive. Please think for the princess." Grand Concubine Jing was dazed. "Ning'an won't be able to come back in this lifetime. She won't be able to, she won't." Granny Kai sobbed and shook her head. The Empress Dowager said that as long as the princess dared to marry, she wouldn't be able to come back for the rest of her life. She was just angry. The Empress Dowager loves the princess so much. If the princess really wanted to come back, how could the Empress Dowager refuse her? Grand Concubine Jing murmured, "Can Ning'an come back?" "Yes, yes." Granny Kai looked at Grand Concubine Jing's dazed expression and stood up quietly. She carefully reached out to hold one end of the imperial edict. "Your Highness, please give the imperial edict to me. I'll put it away for you. I'll grind the ink for you later. Your Highness, please send a letter home to the princess and say that you miss her." Grand Concubine Jing looked confused. "Write a letter to Ning'an." Granny Kai slowly pulled the imperial edict out of her hand. "Yes. Yes, Your Highness. Write a letter to Princess Ning'an. You haven't written a letter home for this month yet." Grand Concubine Jing didn't resist in the end and let her hand fall. Granny Kai took the imperial edict in her hand and let out a long sigh of relief. She quickly put the edict in another secret compartment. The previous secret compartment had been exposed, and this one was under the floorboards. Granny Kai was afraid that Grand Concubine Jing would change her mind, so she quickly went to the study to get a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Your Highness. No matter what, she had to divert the imperial concubine's attention. Grand Concubine Jing raised her brush indifferently. In the darkness of the night where no one could see, she closed her eyes and a tear fell. Xiao Lulang went to the countryside, little Jing Kong went to the Su Kanji house, and Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan went to learn martial arts again. Gu Jiao felt that it would be unreasonable if she did not do something secretly at such a perfect time. She infiltrated Marquis Ding and Manor. Marquis Ding and's manor was as quiet as usual. Originally, Gu Qinglin was a little noisy, but a few days ago, Marquis Gu did not have a carriage. Walking from the countryside to the capital, he nearly broke his legs. When he returned home, he fell ill. Today, Gu Qinglin was taking care of his father in his courtyard. This just so happened to be convenient for Gu Jiao. After all, Gu Qinglin and Gu Qingfeng lived in the same courtyard. It was never a bad thing to have one less person watching over them. Gu Jiao entered Gu Qingfeng's courtyard with ease. Gu Qingfeng was taking a bath. As he soaked, he sang an opera in the wooden tub. Gu Jiao did not understand opera, but for some reason, she felt that his voice was quite pleasant to listen to. Eeb in the sky, the wild geese soar hearing the slave's voice, the shadow falls on the painting screen. Gu Qingfeng was very engrossed in singing. His voice was mellow, his voice melodious, and his gestures were full of charm. You can sing a female voice? Gu Jiao bent down and whispered into his ear. The tone of this sentence was so casual that it was as if he was greeting an acquaintance on the street. However, the reality was that Gu Qingfeng was in his own room, bathing, singing an opera, and not wearing a single stitch of clothing. In order to not be heard by others, he specially chose a time when Gu Qinglin was not in the courtyard and dismissed all the servants. Thus, he did not expect that he would be disturbed. Saying that he was disturbed was not enough. This was simply a shock. Gu Qingfeng fell into the water with a plop and almost choked himself to death. When he held onto the edge of the wooden tub and sat up, he did not know how many mouthfuls of his bath water he had drunk. He grabbed the towel hanging on the wooden tub to cover a certain unspeakable part. He was so panicked that his hair stood up in the tub. Why did you come in the middle of the night? And you specifically chose to come when I was bathing. Do you have some strange fetish? Last time it was in the toilet, and this time it was in the bathtub. Gu Qingfeng seriously suspected that she did it on purpose. Gu Jiao spread her hands. I didn't know that you were the one singing the opera. Who asked you to sing an opera when you were bathing? And a female one at that. Gu Qingfeng's face turned red. Sheng Dan is clean and ugly, it's whatever I sing. Do you understand? I don't understand. Gu Jiao said bluntly. Gu Qingfeng gritted his teeth. You, get out. Oh. Gu Jiao turned around, opened the door and walked out. She had already crossed the threshold when suddenly a small head popped in. It's quite nice. Gu Qingfeng. Shut up. Last time, when he pretended to be an assassin to frame Nanny Kai, Gu Qingfeng had used a voice that was completely different from his usual voice. Gu Jiao did not take it to heart at that time. She only thought that they were professional thieves. Not only could they hide their appearance, but they could also disguise their voice. But tonight, when she heard it, it was not a fake voice. He could really change his voice. Hey, what other voices do you know? Gu Jiao asked after Gu Qingfeng came out of the room with a gloomy face. None, Gu Qingfeng said in a bad mood. Gu Jiao? Gu Qingfeng thought that she had given up. She suddenly asked again. Do you know a lowly voice? Then, mature voice? Teenager voice? Queen voice? Gu Qingfeng stopped and looked at her in confusion. Although I don't know what you are talking about, but when did you become so talkative? Isn't little Jing Kong the only little loudspeaker spirit in your family? Gu Jiao blinked and stopped pestering him to change his voice. She took out a copper coin from her pouch and handed it to him. What is it? Gu Qingfeng asked. Gu Jiao said, a tip for you. Gu Qingfeng. The two left the courtyard and walked forward at a moderate pace. However, the old duke was not around and most of the secret guards in the residence were not around either. When they passed by a small wooden house, Gu Qingfeng said, if you want to see me in the future, can you let me know in advance? Or, you can at least knock on the door. Today, she only saw him bathing and singing. What if one day, he was a man and it would be inconvenient for him to be seen by others? Oh, is that so? Gu Jiao raised her hand and knocked on the door of the small wooden house. Creak! The door of the small wooden house opened. Both of them were stunned. No one expected that there would be someone here, and the person who walked out was Gu Changqing. Both of them were wearing night clothes and holding masks in their hands. When Gu Qingfeng saw his eldest brother, he put on his mask and ran away with his lightness skill. Gu Changqing frowned. Who is it? However, Gu Qingfeng's figure had already disappeared. Did someone pass by here just now? Gu Changqing asked. Gu Jiao shrugged. I don't think so. That guy wasn't human. She didn't want to say that. Gu Chongqing stopped looking around and looked at Gu Jiao in confusion. It's so late. Why are you here? Where are you going wearing night clothes? Gu Jiao. Well, Gu Chongqing asked. Are you looking for me? Gu Jiao thought for a while. That's fine too. Gu Chongqing. What do you mean that's fine too? Is it true or not? I want to steal an imperial edict, Gu Jiao said bluntly. No one would believe her if she said she was here for a walk since they had already seen her. Gu Chongqing was shocked. What imperial edict? Why do you want to steal one? Gu Jiao said calmly. Concubine Jing has an imperial edict. I want to steal that. Gu Chongqing looked at Gu Jiao suspiciously. How do you know she has an imperial edict? Did you investigate her before? Did you steal something from her? Gu Jiao blinked innocently. Gu Chongqing sucked in a cold breath. You're crazy. She has shadow dragon guards with her. You'll die if you go near her. Gu Jiao blinked but didn't say anything. Gu Chongqing suddenly couldn't get angry. No, he was still angry. It's too dangerous. Don't do this alone in the future. Of course, he didn't know that Gu Jiao had dragged Gu Chengfeng along. Gu Chongqing asked, When did you go? Gu Jiao thought for a while. The day before yesterday? Gu Chongqing frowned. Did you alarm her? Gu Jiao nodded. Yes. Gu Chongqing sucked in a cold breath again. Did this girl know what she was doing? She had managed to escape unscathed after alarming her. Should he say that she was lucky or lucky? Moreover, it had only been a few days and she dared to go again? Was this girl's guts made of iron? Gu Chongqing didn't know what to say. He face-bombed. It's too dangerous to steal an imperial edict now. Moreover, she might move it. Do you know what imperial edict it is? Gu Jiao shook her head. I didn't have time to see it. Gu Chongqing said thoughtfully. Could it be the imperial edict that the late emperor issued before his death to bury Empress Dowager Zhuang? Gu Chongqing's reaction was the same as Gu Qingfeng's, which wasn't strange. After all, the matter of concubine Jing stealing the imperial edict and burning it had caused a great uproar. Although the emperor had suppressed the news that should have leaked had already spread among the noble families. If concubine Jing had an imperial edict, Gu Chongqing could only think of this imperial edict. Gu Chongqing said, Leave the imperial edict to me. Don't act rashly. It's important to deal with her, but your safety is more important. Gu Chongqing couldn't bring himself to say such mushy words. The night wind was a bit strong, and Gu Jiao's ahog stood up again. Gu Chongqing raised his hand and gently pressed down her ahog. Once he let go, it stubbornly stood up again. Gu Chongqing suddenly wanted to laugh. He thought of Gu Yan. As expected of a boy phoenix twin. Even the ahog on her head was as stubborn. He gently rubbed her head. I'll send you back. Gu Jiao said. Oh. Gu Chongqing sent Gu Jiao out of the manor through the main entrance. He had someone prepare a carriage for Gu Jiao to sit in. And they left Marquis Ding En's manor openly. The carriage stopped at Baishui Alley. You enter the room first. Gu Chongqing said to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao suppressed the urge to steal the imperial edict and slowly entered the room. Gu Chongqing went over to the old chancellor's side. The old chancellor was inspecting the candied fruits in the kitchen. That's right, the candied fruits given to Grandaunt every day were all personally made by the old chancellor. They tasted better than the ones on the market. More importantly, they had less sugar and were healthier. The old chancellor met with Gu Chongqing in the study room. Gu Chongqing stated the purpose of his visit. The old chancellor stroked his beard. You're saying, it's very likely that imperial concubine Jing didn't burn the imperial edict? That's strange. She and Zhuang Jin's were irreconcilable. If she really had an imperial edict ordering Zhuang Jin's death, why didn't she take it out earlier? Gu Chongqing said. Could it be a trump card to threaten the Empress Dowager? The old chancellor pondered for a moment and said, Why would she want to threaten Zhuang Jin's? Wouldn't it be better to just kill her? Whatever Zhuang Jin's could give her, His Majesty could also give her. On the contrary, because of Zhuang Jin's restriction, His Majesty's power was greatly reduced and he gave her less. So no matter how you look at it, killing Zhuang Jin's was the best choice for her. Gu Chongqing asked, Could it be that the imperial edict didn't say that the Empress Dowager was to be buried with her? The old chancellor frowned. But if it wasn't for Zhuang Jin's to be buried with her, then what would it be? Gu Chongqing had a headache. There isn't a third living person who has seen the imperial edict. No one knows what was written on it. The old chancellor's eyes lit up. No, maybe there is one person who knows. Gu Chongqing looked at him in confusion. The old chancellor said, Princess Ning and Gu Chongqing. Her? The old chancellor said. She is imperial concubine Jing's daughter, and the closest person to her in the world. Maybe she has seen the imperial edict. Gu Chongqing hesitated for a moment and said, but she is far away at the frontier fortress. Even if she has seen it, she won't be able to come back for a while. Send someone to ask her and get the news back a long time later. Moreover, she might not say it. If Princess Ningen had really seen it, and didn't mention a word about the imperial edict after so long, then there was only one possibility: she couldn't mention it. Gu Chongqing sighed. Could it be that no one else knows the contents of the imperial edict? Maybe. There is one more, the old chancellor said. Who? Gu Chongqing asked. The old chancellor looked at the west room next door with a complicated expression. Xiao Heng's mother, Princess Xinyang. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428226/111127520. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion mobile reading website. Chapter 376. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. The reason for this conjecture was that Xiao Lulang had told the old chancellor that Princess Xinyang also had the dragon shadow guards. No matter what purpose the late emperor had for giving the dragon shadow guards to Princess Xinyang, it at least meant one thing. Princess Xinyang was very important in the late emperor's heart. In fact, if he hadn't heard from Xiao Lulang that Princess Xinyang had the dragon shadow guards, the old chancellor probably wouldn't have known that the relationship between father and daughter was so deep. Princess Xinyang's birth mother was Consort Yu, who had died of illness when she was 13. At that time, Princess Xinyang had already grown up, so there was no such thing as who would adopt her and who would raise her. The late emperor didn't take special care of her because she had lost her parents. He treated her no differently than he treated the other princesses in the palace. The old chancellor shook his head. It seemed that there were still many things he didn't know. Gu Chongqing and Princess Xinyang weren't of the same generation, so he didn't know much about the situation at that time, so he didn't feel as much as the old chancellor. He only thought that the late emperor had always loved this daughter very much, but he didn't know about it. He considered the current situation and said, Princess Xinyang isn't in the capital, but it's not too far away. You can get there in a few days if you ride fast. She might not see you, the old chancellor said. Gu Chongqing was silent. He knew that the old chancellor wasn't lying. Ever since the young duke had died in the fire at the directorate, Princess Xinyang had been so overcome with grief that she couldn't control herself. In the end, she took her confidants and left the sad capital. She refused to see anyone related to the capital. It was understandable. The blow of losing her son was too big for her. She didn't want to be hurt by the scene, and she didn't want to come into contact with anyone who could make her recall her past in the capital. We have to try, Gu Chongqing said. The old chancellor didn't refute. Neither of them were fools. On the surface, the simplest and most direct way was to steal back the imperial edict. However, as long as the Shadow Dragon Guard was in the hands of old concubine Jing, they couldn't do it. Even if they knew the contents of the imperial edict, they might not be able to get their hands on it. However, as the saying goes, Know thyself and know thy enemy to be victorious in every battle. As long as they knew the contents of the imperial edict, they would be able to figure out what old concubine Jing's trump card was. Gu Chongqing said, Princess Xinyang is near Fengdu Mountain, right? It just so happens that I'm going there soon, so I'll pay her a visit. Why are you going to Fengdu Mountain? The old chancellor asked out of concern. Gu Chongqing said, Grandfather asked me to go. It was probably related to the secret army. His grandfather didn't say much about it. Speaking of which, it was strange. Last time, his grandfather acted as if he was making arrangements for his death, and gave them all the tokens. In the end, he took them all back the next day. The old chancellor's mood became gloomy. If you go to Fengdu Mountain, help me offer incense to an old friend. Okay. Gu Chongqing didn't ask who the old friend was, or how he was related to the old chancellor. He only asked for the address of the graveyard before getting up to leave. When he reached the door, he unexpectedly ran into Xiao Lulang. He didn't know how long Xiao Lulang had been here and how much he had heard, but he wasn't an outsider after all, so there was no need to hide it from him. Gu Chongqing nodded in greeting. Xiao Lulang also nodded in return. After Gu Chongqing left the courtyard, the old chancellor also came out. He looked at the thin and lonely Xiao Lulang under the moonlight and opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. After a long while, he sighed in shame. Sorry, I should have told you in advance. I shouldn't have dragged Princess Xinyang into this. That being said, even if it happened again and Xiao Lulang stopped him, he would have still told Gu Chongqing and hoped that Gu Chongqing could ask Princess Xinyang for an answer. It wasn't just to take down concubine Jing, but also for Xiao Yolang's safety. Xiao Lulang was already in the picture. As long as concubine Jing wasn't removed, he wouldn't be able to eliminate the danger. But, teacher, it's getting late. You should rest. The old chancellor and Xiao Liulang's voices sounded at almost the same time, which meant that it was indeed the old chancellor who spoke first. However, Xiao Lulang continued after just 2 words. It was the kind of seamless connection that made it impossible to tell if he interrupted on purpose, or if it was really a coincidence. The old chancellor paused and nodded. Okay, I'm almost done here. You should go rest as well. You've worked hard in the countryside today. Go to bed early. According to the usual practice and their relationship, the old chancellor would have been concerned about what he did in the countryside. After all, for Hanlin officials, it was often these political achievements that played a role in promoting them. However, at this point in the conversation, everyone knew that it was time to end the topic. Xiao Lulang returned to the room next door. Lu Quan walked over from the corridor. Master. Sigh. The old chancellor sighed. Why do you think he's so stubborn? Lu Quan already knew Xiao Liulang's identity, but he still didn't quite understand the old chancellor's words. Why do you say that, master? The old chancellor waved his hand. Forget it, it's nothing. After returning to his residence, Xiao Lulang plunged into the study and closed the door. He didn't light the lamp and just stood there alone in the boundless night. He knew what his teacher wanted to ask. Why didn't you tell Princess Xianyang that you've returned? Not telling Marquis Xianping could still be considered pardonable. After all, the father and son relationship wasn't close, and there would always be some strange rejection and friction between men. It wouldn't be strange for a rebellious youth and a dissolute father to become enemies. But what about Princess Xianyang? That mother who placed you at the top of her heart. What did she do wrong? What crime did she commit? Why did it have to be like this? Previously, I thought that you didn't go find her because you were worried that your matter would involve too much and implicate her. But she has the dragon shadow guard in her hands. Who can hurt her? Why did you do this, Aheng Wai? Gu Jiao went to the kitchen to boil some water and made some supper. She planned to see if the men at home had returned. When she passed by the study, the door was closed and no candlelight came out. She didn't pay much attention to it and walked over. But before she took 2 steps, she turned back. It was a kind of intuition. She didn't knock on the door like she usually did. Instead, she gently pushed open the door and walked in. The weak candlelight in the corridor shone in, allowing her to clearly see the figure in front of the desk that seemed to be shrouded in sorrow. She closed the door behind her, and her figure was once again swallowed by the darkness. But she knew where he was. She could hear his breathing. She slowly walked over and stopped behind him. Xiao Luleng didn't turn around, nor did he speak. She also didn't speak. It was impossible for him to not know that someone had come in. His lack of reaction definitely meant that he didn't want to speak. Gu Jiao just couldn't understand too many complex emotions, but that didn't mean that she couldn't feel other people's emotions. He was sad. Very sad. Very sad. Gu Jiao's mind flashed back to when she was sad because her grandaunt had forgotten about her. The scene of him pulling her into his embrace and gently comforting her. Unfortunately, she wasn't tall enough and couldn't pull him into her embrace and have him bury his head in her chest. She thought for a bit, then walked forward. Reaching out her small arms, she gently hugged him from behind. Like this, it was fine, right? It would make him feel less sad, right? Gu Jiao hugged him very gently at first, but when she pressed her cheek against his slightly stiff back, she didn't know if it was because she was close to his heart, but she felt even more sad. She tightened her arms. In the darkness, Xiao Luleng endured the pain in his throat, raised his hand, and covered her hand around his waist. This time was no different from any other time. Gu Jiao comforted him considerately, but she didn't question him. Gu Jiao clearly felt that after he calmed down a little and she pulled away, he opened his mouth as if he had something to say to her. Gu Jiao paused for a second. That second was neither fast nor slow. If he wanted to explain, he could stop her. If he still decided not to explain, it wouldn't be too awkward for the two of them. In the end, he didn't explain. The next day, Gu Jiao got up early and helped senior servant Fang make breakfast for the family. When Xiao Luleng came out of the west room, Gu Jiao was arranging the bowls and chopsticks. She smiled at him and said, "Good morning." It was as if nothing had happened and was no different from usual. Xiao Luleng nodded and also greeted, "Good morning." Soon little Jing Kong also got up. He went to the backyard to practice. After a while, Gu Xiaoshan and Gu Yan also got up. A lively morning began. After breakfast, Xiao Luleng went to the Hanlin Academy. Little Jing Kong followed the old chancellor to the Imperial College. As for Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan, they naturally went to the Qinghe Academy. Now the family had two carriages. Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan used one carriage. Xiao Luleng and the other two sat in Lu Quan's carriage. Lu Quan first sent the old and young to the Imperial College, and then sent Xiao Luleng to the Hanlin Academy. Gu Jiao went to the medical center. She received a letter from Xue Ningxiang. It had been half a year since Xue Ningxiang sent her a letter. However, after reading the contents of the letter, Gu Jiao understood why Xue Ningxiang sent her a letter so late. Xue Ningxiang's mother-in-law died of illness on the third day after Zhou Erzwang returned home. Gu Jiao had seen Xue Ningxiang's mother-in-law. She was aging and her organs were all failing. It was not something that could be reversed by medicine. It was not easy for her to persist until her son came back to see her for the last time. She died in her sleep. She passed away peacefully. Zhao country had a system of mourning for the dead. The elders of the family had to stay at home for at least 1.5 to 3 years to observe mourning for the dead. Zhou Erzwang was only a soldier and was not in the mourning team. However, his mother's funeral still had to be arranged properly. Zhou Erzwang asked his companions to apply for leave and stayed in the village to bury his mother properly. This was something that happened in the spring. Now that summer was almost over, Zhou Erzwang should have returned by now. However, something big happened. Dean Li of the Heavenly Fragrance Academy actually came to propose marriage to Xue Ningxiang. Seeing this, Gu Jiao was really surprised. Xue Ningxiang did not talk about everything with her, but she did not mention anything about Dean Li and her. Of course, there was an explanation in the letter. It turned out that when she and Xiao Luleng were still in the countryside, Dean Li had already met Xue Ningxiang several times. Gouwa even chased after him and called him father. Gouwa was a child who had just learned to speak. He did not understand the meaning of father. When he saw other children calling adult men father, he probably thought that all of these men were fathers. This was Gu Jiao's understanding. Xue Ningxiang did not explain in detail. He only said that Gouwa was later seen by old Madame Li. Old Madame Li was old and her mind was not clear. She thought of Gouwa as her own little grandson. Dean Li was a good person. He had a good relationship with Xiao Liulong's family. He also helped Xue Ningxiang out of trouble. Xue Ningxiang could not bear to see the old man sad, so she let him be mistaken. Who knew that after that incident, things got out of hand? Old Madame Li would ask for a little grandson every few days. She even thought of Xue Ningxiang as her own daughter-in-law. Dean Li told Xue Ningxiang not to misunderstand. Xue Ningxiang really did not misunderstand. Who knew that he would come to propose marriage? Gu Jiao knew that trouble was coming when she saw this. Sure enough, the letter wrote that Zhou Erzwang and Dean Li had a conflict. Zhou Erzwang even fought with Dean Li. Zhou Erzwang was a soldier, while Dean Li was a scholar. It was obvious who was at a disadvantage in this fight. Gu Jiao had already seen through Zhou Erzwang's feelings for Xue Ningxiang. However, she did not have the opportunity to discover Dean Li's feelings until today. It was not difficult to explain why Xue Ningxiang's calligraphy improved so much. Her literary talent also improved by leaps and bounds. She did not even need someone to write for her. Now Xue Ningxiang was having a headache. She said that she wanted to shave her head and become a nun, but she was reluctant to leave Gohua. Gu Jiao could vaguely understand Xue Ningxiang's troubles. In this era, women were not very tolerant. Xue Ningxiang was a widow. Her second marriage was already criticized. What's more, she was going to marry either Dean Li, who was not a match for her in terms of social status, or Zhou Erzwang, who violated the moral principles. No matter how she looked at it, it was a dead end. Unless she could withstand those rumors and slanders. Obviously, she could not. Otherwise, she would not want to become a nun. At the end of the letter, it talked about the Medicine Mountain. The Medicine Mountain had been reclaimed. Under the leadership of Luo Lijing, the villagers had also planted the medicine that Gu Jiao had specified. Gu Jiao's fingertips tapped on the table a few times. She took the letter to the palace. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that could not be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1111102202. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. Chapter 377. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online. Gu Jiao wasn't good at dealing with relationships, but she remembered that her grandaunt liked Xue Ningxiang. She wondered if she still remembered Xue Ningxiang after being hit in the head. Miss Gu, you're here? The servants of Renshou Palace bowed to Gu Jiao. Is the Empress Dowager here? Gu Jiao asked. Yes, she just left court. The servant added. Prince Ning is here as well. Oh, Prince Ning is back. After Gu Jiao got close to the palace, she could hear some of the movements in court without deliberately asking around. Prince Ning had taken Tang Yueshan north to suppress bandits a few days ago. Although it was called suppressing bandits, it was actually an excuse to investigate the situation at the border. The Chun state was restless again, and had secretly stationed a lot of troops at the border. Since they were discussing politics, Gu Jiao didn't disturb them, and went straight to the swing to bask in the sun. She wasn't afraid of getting tanned, even though it seemed that her body couldn't get tanned. As she swung on the swing, she secretly thought about when she could find old concubine Jing again. That woman had harmed her grandaunt for so many years. Even if she couldn't immediately pull her down, she should at least collect some interest. Just as she was thinking, she heard someone call her from behind. Auntie. Oh. When Gu Jiao's body swung back to the ground, she reached out with the tip of her foot and stopped the swing. Then she turned around and looked at the handsome young man who had just walked through the Chuehua gate. Prince Ning? Prince Ning was in a trance for a moment. He let out an ah and came back to his senses. He smiled apologetically. Sorry, I mistook you for someone else. His gaze lingered on Gu Jiao's body. You really do look like her. Gu Jiao lowered her head to look at her clothes. It was not the green clothes she usually wore. It was the lake blue corset dress with water sleeves that she had worn at her great-aunt's place after dirtying her clothes last time. Was it because he mistook her for someone else? Or Gu Jiao had never asked her grandaunt why there were so many young women's clothes in her bedroom. She thought her great-aunt had prepared it for her. But from the looks of it, that didn't seem to be the case. That's right, it shouldn't be. Their styles were clearly different. As long as it didn't involve a mission, Gu Jiao wasn't someone who would care about the details of clothing. Normally, Yaoshe would make clothes for her based on what she liked, but in reality, she was not that picky about clothes. It was like someone who liked to eat meat, but if they were given a table full of vegetables, they would not refuse to eat them. She would take whatever she found in the closet as long as she could wear it. Coincidentally, she was wearing this set today. Ning Wang had saved Gu Jiao once when consort Rui Wang had been attacked. At that time, the two were not familiar with each other. Perhaps it was because he had heard about the relationship between Gu Jiao and the Empress Dowager. Or perhaps it was Gu Jiao's clothes that he found familiar, but he took the initiative to walk over and strike up a conversation with Gu Jiao. Has anyone ever told you that you look very much like Aunt Ningen? He asked. Princess Ningen? Gu Jiao shook her head. No. Ning Wang smiled and said, when I was very young, Aunt married off to the northern frontier. After that, I never saw her again. However, Aunt was very good to me. I have always remembered her. Gu Jiao made a no sound and asked, do we look very similar? Then she would have to wonder about her own past. No, you do not look alike. As Ning Wang spoke, his gaze landed on the birthmark on her left cheek. But in this place, she was once injured and left a small scar. She would always use cinnabar to draw a begonia. Gu Jiao touched her own birthmark. Ning Wang couldn't help but look at Gu Jiao a few more times. Last time, I was busy catching the assassins and did not think it was very similar. Seeing you today. To be able to make Ning Wang constantly say that she looked like Princess Ningen, it seemed that other than her face, she was very similar to Princess Ningen in other aspects. Normal people would be very happy to be praised like a princess. This meant that she had the temperament and presence of a princess. It was a high praise. However, Gu Jiao was very calm. She was not happy, nor was she unhappy. Ning Wang then said, I have heard about the Empress Dowager. I still have not thanked you and your family for taking care of the Empress Dowager. If you need anything, you can come to Ning Wang Fu to find me at any time. No matter if it was because Ning Wang had pulled out his sword to help for the sake of consort Rui Wang, or because of his duty as a prince, Gu Jiao had avoided disaster because of him. It was an indisputable fact. Gu Jiao nodded. All right. Ning Wang seemed very happy and smiled. Then it is settled. Right, I heard from the Empress Dowager that your medical skills are good. Can you come to the Fu to see a doctor? The consultation fee is not cheap. Gu Jiao said. Ning Wang probably did not expect Gu Jiao to react like this. Normal adults would be so honored to be able to go to the Fu to see a doctor that they would not accept the consultation fee. Ning Wang probably did not expect Gu Jiao to react like this. He did not know how to respond. A moment later he couldn't help but say, of course. Gu Jiao said, when I have time, I will have someone send an invitation to the Fu. Ning Wang smiled. Then it is settled. I still have something to do, so I will leave first. After Ning Wang left, Gu Jiao got up from the swing and walked to her great-aunt's study. Empress Dowager Zhuang was reading the memorial. When she saw Gu Jiao come in, she snorted angrily. Her great-aunt was always like this, so Gu Jiao did not feel that she had done something unforgivable. She walked over and handed Xuanningsiang's letter to her great-aunt. What is it? Empress Dowager Zhuang asked. Xuanningsiang's letter. Does great-aunt still remember her? Gu Jiao asked. Empress Dowager Zhuang frowned and thought. Gu Jiao reminded. Go Wa's mother. When it came to Go Wa, Empress Dowager Zhuang remembered. If she gave him a candied fruit, he would lick her courtyard all day long. He was not noisy at all, and was much easier to take care of than little Jing Kong. Then Empress Dowager Zhuang remembered Xuanningsiang. The main reason was that Xuanningsiang's cooking was good and Liulong's was bad. As long as Gu Jiao was not here, she would call Xuanningsiang over to cook. The food is good, Empress Dowager Zhuang said. Read the letter first, Gu Jiao said. Empress Dowager Zhuang finished reading the letter. To be honest, Xuanningsiang's handwriting was really ugly. But with Gu Jiao's pearls in the front, Empress Dowager Zhuang felt that this kind of handwriting was barely acceptable. Oh. Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her eyebrows. Little Xiangxiang is quite popular. Looking at this reaction, she was worthy of being her great-aunt. Gu Jiao sat down opposite Empress Dowager Zhuang and looked at her without blinking. Right? Then how should this matter be resolved? Empress Dowager Zhuang did not speak, but reached out her hand and made a give-it gesture. Gu Jiao pretended not to understand. What? Empress Dowager Zhuang said coldly. Don't play dumb with me. Make up for yesterday's performance fee. Otherwise, don't talk about it. She knew it. Okay. Gu Jiao sighed and reluctantly took out the box of candied fruits. She counted 5 and put them in Empress Dowager Zhuang's hand. She said with a pained expression, there are only a few left. There is nothing to eat in Jingkong. Empress Dowager Zhuang was choked by Gu Jiao's exaggerated and painful acting skills. This girl did not enter the palace to fight for favor. Otherwise, who would be fooled by her acting skills? However, Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyes swept over her small fist. It seemed that she did not need to pretend. With one punch, even the emperor would be lying down. Empress Dowager Zhuang put away the candied fruits and said to Gu Jiao, "What's so difficult about this? Who does she like? Jia will arrange a marriage for her." The problem was, Xuanningsiang did not write who she liked in the letter. Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. Then should I write a reply to her? Forget it. She won't say this in the letter. Empress Dowager Zhuang called eunuch Qin. Send 2 reliable people to the county in Yuzhou. Empress Dowager Zhuang gave the order, and eunuch Qin left. This was the convenience of power. Whether it was the way to solve a problem or the speed, it was simple and crude. With her grandaunt taking over, Gu Jiao did not have to worry about this. She was just curious. One was a middle-aged warm uncle, the other was an infatuated wolf puppy. Who would Xuanningsiang choose to marry? As Gu Jiao was thinking, a eunuch came from outside the door to announce that the emperor had come. The emperor came to ask Empress Dowager Zhuang to put on a show. Even if the emperor had slowly developed a dislike for concubine Jing, he would not see her true colors so quickly. Therefore, the emperor always thought that the murderer was still in the dark and had not made a move yet. Gu Jiao, who knew the whole truth, not only did she make a move, but she also smashed her own foot. Forget it. Just put on a show. It's not a bad thing. Her grandaunt had tolerated the emperor for so many years without knowing that he had been drugged. Who could say that she did not care about the mother-son relationship in her heart? Gu Jiao also kept the truth from her grandaunt. Therefore, her grandaunt also thought that concubine Jing had not made a move. Mother, do you want to go to the imperial garden today? The emperor asked faintly. This was also a person with terrible acting skills. Empress Dowager Zhuang rolled her eyes and did not leave Rinshou Palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang was too lazy to act with him. Yes, why not? But, she dragged out her words and deliberately looked at Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao understood. It was a candied fruit. She understood. She also wanted to see how effective the emperor was on her grandaunt. Madame Nan had said that when a drugged person needed such a large amount of the guiding drug, it meant that the drug was about to lose its effect. She was not sure if it was concubine Jing's white drug or her grandaunt's black drug that was about to lose its effect, or if both drugs were losing their effect at the same time. Gu Jiao made an okay gesture to her grandaunt. Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at her 5 candied fruits with satisfaction. Let's go. The emperor was speechless. Was it an illusion? Why did it feel like the Empress Dowager was drooling? Neither of them had any complaints about Gu Jiao being a tail. Gu Jiao followed them leisurely. Eunuch Qin and Eunuch Wei were also there, but they did not have much of a presence, unlike Gu Jiao, who was sitting in Empress Dowager Zhuang's phoenix carriage. The emperor and Empress Dowager Zhuang walked all the way to the imperial garden. The weather was good today, So there were many people in the imperial garden. Coincidentally, concubine Jing was also there. Empress Dowager Zhuang had already entered her role as soon as she left Rinshou Palace, and was not affected by concubine Jing's presence at all. However, the emperor, who was next to her, stiffened the moment he saw concubine Jing. He panicked as if he had been caught red-handed. Concubine Jing looked at the emperor with a hurt expression. The emperor knew that he shouldn't have done this. His mother was the most important person to him, but he left her and Empress Dowager Zhuang to stroll around the garden. But Gu Jiao understood. The black medicine had only taken effect a little, and the emperor was not completely disgusted with concubine Jing yet. He was probably feeling guilty and complicated at the moment. Gu Jiao guessed that old concubine Jing had expected this, which was why she wanted to come out and see for herself how far the relationship between the emperor and the Empress Dowager had progressed. This could very well affect the next step of her plan. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not know. She was just acting for concubine Jing. It was good that she was here in person. She did not have to tell her through someone else, and the effect would be reduced. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the emperor gently, and took out a handkerchief to wipe the non-existent sweat on his forehead. "Anga, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Let's go sit in the pavilion." No. The emperor came back to his senses, but he did not avoid her touch. Concubine Jing's eyes darkened. Isn't that your mother?" Empress Dowager Zhuang acted as if she had just seen concubine Jing. There was no mistake in her tone and gaze. "Eunuch Qin, go invite concubine Jing over." Yes. Eunuch Qin went to invite concubine Jing. Even Nurse Kai knew that it was very irrational to go over at this time. But sometimes people who had won half their lives would think that they could control everything. Concubine Jing agreed. They sat down in the pavilion. There were 4 stools. Empress Dowager Zhuang sat next to the emperor, and Gu Jiao sat on the other side of the emperor. This caused concubine Jing to sit directly across from the emperor. Hong-er has lost weight recently. He needs to eat more. Empress Dowager Zhuang gently picked up a piece of crab cake and handed it to the emperor. "His Majesty doesn't eat crab cake," concubine Jing reminded gently. Empress Dowager Zhuang. "I forgot that this silly son is picky," Empress Dowager Zhuang said calmly. "He likes it now." "Really? His Majesty?" She smiled and gave him a threatening look. The emperor frowned and took the crab cake with disgust. Empress Dowager Zhuang's handkerchief fell to the ground and was stepped on by herself. She picked it up. Then she took the handkerchief and smeared it on the emperor's mouth. "Aya, why is your mouth full just like when you were young? Come, let mother wipe it for you." The emperor's temples throbbed. "Do you want to die? Don't think I didn't see that you stepped on the handkerchief." The two's eyes fought back and forth a dozen times, but concubine Jing didn't see it that way. They were clearly very close. Concubine Jing didn't know that they were acting and thought that they were really starting to reconcile. Jealousy surged in her heart, and she tore the handkerchief in her hand. Digression. Good morning. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964226/1111101339. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion mobile reading website. Chapter 378. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. The Emperor and Empress Dowager Zhuang were busy fighting a battle of wits and courage, so neither of them noticed concubine Jing's strange behavior. In other words, concubine Jing was like air in their eyes at this moment. Only Gu Jiao, who had been observing concubine Jing's reaction, saw everything. She didn't quite understand. Concubine Jing could be so ruthless as to drug the emperor and arrange for someone to assassinate him. Although the assassination attempt that night might not have been to take the emperor's life, but to frighten and injure the emperor, so that she could frame her grandaunt, it still showed that she didn't love the emperor that much. So why should she care who the emperor favored? Gu Jiao wasn't a person with a strong desire for control, so she naturally couldn't understand Concubine Jing's feelings. However, if she had to put it in her shoes, she would probably be hurt if little Jingkong, who always talked about Jiao Jiao, suddenly stopped liking her one day and turned his head to call someone else. She would probably be very hurt. However, the little Jingkong to her was different from the emperor to Concubine Jing. So, Gu Jiao didn't think that it was very accurate. But that didn't stop her from directly seeing Concubine Jing's little movements. Oh, she's angry. She's quite angry. Gu Jiao rested her chin on her hands and looked at Concubine Jing with interest. Concubine Jing's senses weren't so weak in the past, but perhaps because she was too angry, it took her a while to notice two strange gazes on her. She turned her head and met Gu Jiao's gaze. Generally speaking, it was quite embarrassing to be caught peeping at someone, and one would immediately look away and pretend that nothing had happened. Gu Jiao didn't. She wasn't embarrassed. She even looked at the handkerchief in Concubine Jing's hand with a good temper and raised her eyebrows, as if indicating for her to continue. Please continue. There's no need to be polite. In any case, even if the handkerchief is torn, it's not mine. The most shameful thing in the world wasn't developing feelings of jealousy that one shouldn't have, but being discovered by someone else while being jealous. In the end, the one who was caught was Concubine Jing. Grand Concubine Jing's body stiffened, and her heart felt stifled. She stood up and said, "I'm not feeling well. I'll leave first." Then she turned around with a great movement. This was naturally to attract the emperor's attention. She wanted to use this method to evoke the emperor's shame and pity. Unfortunately, she had miscalculated. The emperor's mouth was wiped by Empress Dowager Zhuang's dirty handkerchief. He flew into a rage out of humiliation and tried to hide. Empress Dowager Zhuang directly pressed down on his head, and he tried to pry her hand away. This scene, to be honest, it was just short of a fight. Eunuch Wei and Eunuch Qin could no longer watch. They turned their faces away and looked at the sky. Other than Gu Jiao and old Concubine Jing's trusted servant, Nanny Kai, no one else noticed that old Concubine Jing had left in a fit of pique. Naturally, Gu Jiao would not keep her. She paused in her steps and looked at the two who were in a heated argument. She noticed Gu Jiao's gaze. She then looked at Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao gestured for her to leave. "Didn't you want to leave? Go on. Don't stay here." Old Concubine Jing was furious and left with a livid expression. When the emperor finally broke free from Empress Dowager Zhuang's clutches and looked up at old Concubine Jing, she was nowhere to be seen. The emperor felt awkward and glared at Empress Dowager Zhuang. "This is great." Mother left in a fit of anger. "Can't the Empress Dowager restrain herself in front of old Concubine Jing? You were acting for the culprit, not for..." Before he could finish his sentence, Empress Dowager Zhuang slapped the soiled handkerchief on his face. She then stood up and said, "Jiao Jiao, let's go." Even when Empress Dowager Zhuang wiped his mouth with the soiled handkerchief, there was no trace of impatience in her tone and smile. She was like a good mother who liked to joke with her son. The emperor almost believed that Empress Dowager Zhuang's act had become real, and that she loved her son. He was about to tell her, "Don't take it seriously. I'm just acting with you. I don't think of you as my mother. My only mother is old Concubine Jing." However, Empress Dowager Zhuang stopped acting in the next second, and regained her domineering aura. The emperor was dumbfounded by the speed at which she changed her attitude. The emperor said, You're leaving just like that?" Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted. She didn't even give him a look and left with Gu Jiao. The emperor was speechless. On the other side, old Concubine Jing returned to the nunnery with Granny Kai. She maintained a gentle and decent expression along the way, but her face turned cold as soon as she entered her room. In Nanny Kai's view, her master was in a hurry to suffer. Since the emperor had been drugged, his intimacy with her would begin to decrease day by day. There was no need to verify anything in front of the emperor. It was obvious and there was no way to solve it. Actually, her master understood, but she just couldn't accept it. Over the years, the emperor had treated her too well, too well. She had even forgotten where this kindness came from. Perhaps she hadn't forgotten, but she had put in a lot of effort, believing that they had cultivated an unbreakable bond between mother and son. To put it bluntly, it was her pride and self-esteem that didn't allow it. She felt that she shouldn't be so unattractive that she couldn't even handle a son. He must have truly developed a mother-son bond with me. Old concubine Jing had said this in front of Granny Kai more than once. Granny Kai still remembered the smile on old concubine Jing's face. It was a very happy smile, but it wasn't a mother showing off her relationship with her son. It was more like a general showing off his spoils of war after winning a battle. Now that spoil was gone. Her pride and self-esteem had been crushed. No matter what, old concubine Jing was her master. As a servant, Granny Kai wouldn't be disloyal to her. She just didn't want to see her master sink into a bad mood that she shouldn't be in. Grand Imperial Concubine. She looked deeply at her. Old concubine Jing waved her sleeve and summoned the Shadow Dragon Guard. An ominous feeling rose in Granny Kai's heart. She asked nervously, Grand Imperial Concubine, what do you want to do? Old concubine Jing looked at the Shadow Dragon Guard, who was like a killing tool, and said coldly, go to Renshou Palace and kill Empress Dowager Zhuang. Granny Kai turned pale with fright. Grand Imperial Concubine, you can't do that. You'll have no way out if you're discovered. You'll be buried with the Empress Dowager. Old concubine Jing looked coldly at the Shadow Dragon Guard. Do it discreetly and don't let anyone discover you. Otherwise, don't come back. The Shadow Dragon Guard had the ability to sneak into Renshou Palace and kill people. He hadn't done it before because there was no need. Empress Dowager Zhuang had been fighting with the Emperor day and night, and her days weren't easy at all. Wasn't it better to see her suffer than to kill her? However, the Shadow Dragon Guard didn't move. Old concubine Jing frowned. I want you to go to Renshou Palace and kill Empress Dowager Zhuang gents. The Shadow Dragon Guard still didn't move. Old concubine Jing repeated herself to make sure that the Shadow Dragon Guard had heard her. But he still refused to carry out the order. When the Shadow Dragon Guard had been sent to her side, the Emperor had ordered them to listen to all her orders. But she also knew that the Shadow Dragon Guard's orders were divided into ranks. The first order they obeyed came from the previous Emperor, and the second order came from the Emperor. When her orders conflicted with their previous orders, the Shadow Dragon Guard wouldn't carry them out. Ever since the Emperor had given the Shadow Dragon Guard to her, he hadn't spoken to them again. In other words, before she had gotten the Shadow Dragon Guard, someone had already ordered them not to harm Zhuang Jin's. Who had given the Shadow Dragon Guard this order? Was it the Emperor? Or the previous Emperor? If it was the previous Emperor, then what was the Imperial Edict all about? If it was the Emperor, the previous Emperor had given the Shadow Dragon Guard to the Emperor before his death. At that time, his relationship with Empress Dowager Zhuang had already begun to tear apart, but he still ordered the Shadow Dragon Guard not to harm her? Old concubine Jing couldn't figure it out. She didn't know which of the two men had protected Zhuang Jin's. Zhuang Jin's clearly wasn't worth it. As a wife, she had never truly loved her husband. She had used the previous emperor for his entire life, and turned his entire harem into leeks in her bowl. As a mother, she had never wholeheartedly supported her son. She had held court from behind a curtain and dominated the court, turning the emperor into a laughable puppet. Zhuang Jin's was the demon empress, the source of all evil. Everyone had the right to punish her. Imperial concubine. Imperial concubine. Mama Kai saw that old concubine Jing's expression was becoming more and more unnatural. She worriedly walked forward and gently held her arm. You're tired. Don't think about anything. This servant will help you to the bed to rest for a while. Old concubine Jing dazedly raised her head, but the moment she turned around, her qi and blood surged, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Renshou Palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang was very happy today. Not only did she slap her foolish son a few times, she also received 5 candied fruits that she had worked so hard to earn. No, including yesterday's, there were 10 candied fruits in total. She took out her small jar of candies and only ate 5 of them. She saved the remaining 5 for when she ran out of food in the future. The all-powerful demon empress who brought disaster to the country was just that quick-witted. Gu Jiao ate lunch at Rinshou Palace before leaving. Eunuch Qin sent a carriage to send her off. Gu Jiao didn't return to the medical center. Instead, she gave the coachman another place to go. The carriage was neither too slow nor too fast. It just so happened that it was maintained at a speed that wouldn't make Gu Jiao anxious or too bumpy. Gu Jiao was very satisfied with the coachman of Rinshou Palace. Gu Jiao was in a good mood today. She even hummed a few lines of a song that she heard from Gu Chengfeng. However, her voice was fine when it came to singing pop songs from her previous life, but it was a bit lacking when it came to operas. The coachman almost drove the carriage into a ditch several times. The carriage stopped at the entrance of Narcissus' embroidery house. The coachman said, "Miss Gu, this servant will wait for you here." Gu Jiao said, "No need. I'll go back by myself later. You can go back to the palace." Those who came from Rinshou Palace were all shrewd people. He could tell that Gu Jiao wanted to do her own things, so he didn't insist and drove the carriage back to the palace. Gu Jiao passed through Narcissus' embroidery house and arrived at the underground arena of the dye house. He had been pacing back and forth at the entrance for a long time. When he finally saw Gu Jiao, he let out a long sigh of relief. "Aya, you scared me to death. Little brother Gu, I thought you weren't coming." Gu Jiao had already changed her clothes and put on her mask while she was in the carriage. She took out her little notebook and scribbled, "Is it my turn to go on stage today?" He hurriedly said, It's here. Don't worry, the first round won't be difficult. I've already informed them. With your strength, it won't be a big problem. I've already told you the rules, right? You still remember, right?" Gu Jiao nodded her head. The rules of the underground arena were similar to those of Taihe Martial Arts Hall. It was also a promotion system, but it was stricter and crueler. There were 10 levels here. For example, a novice would be promoted by winning 10 matches. You could challenge someone of a higher level, but it wasn't like the martial arts hall where you could directly take away your opponent's score after winning. Gu Jiao looked at the most conspicuous wall of the arena. There was a black gold embossed ranking board hanging high up. There were also some small wooden plates hanging on it in order. "What's that?" Gu Jiao wrote. He looked at it and showed an incomparably respectful expression. "That's the ranking of the experts in the underground arena. The top 100 people are all on the ranking board." "What happens if you're on the ranking board?" Gu Jiao wrote again. He smiled. "You'll receive an offering from the underground arena." "There's a salary?" Gu Jiao's small eyes lit up. "How much is the offering?" He patiently explained. "There's not much for those below 50. It ranges from 1 to 10 taels per month. Those above 50 get 20 taels per month. Those above 40 get 50 taels per month. Those above 30 get 100 taels per month. Those below 20 get 100 taels per month." Gu Jiao wrote again. "What's the highest?" He only thought that she was curious and casually asked. He didn't think that her ambition was that big. He said, "There's no upper limit." Gu Jiao wrote. "Then you can have as much as you want. You can give as much as you want. As far as I know, there's a champion who received this amount of offering in a month." He said and stretched out a finger. Gu Jiao wrote in surprise, 1,000 taels? He smiled, "Gold." Gu Jiao looked at the arena that was overflowing with murderous aura. She narrowed her eyes and licked her lips. She liked it here. Digression. "Champion, did you ask me if I agreed?" The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1110763646. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. Chapter 379. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. Do well, you'll have a chance. Uncle Ho patted Gu Jiao's shoulder with a smile. What kind of joke was this? How could there be a chance? He had brought this kid into the arena himself. He didn't brag, nor did he belittle others. If he worked hard, there was still some hope for him to be in the 70th or 80th position. But painting a pie in the sky for others was not a bad thing. He saw that the young man was full of vigor, and wanted to tell him that if he could become the top of the list, it would not be as simple as a consecration. Unfortunately, before he could speak, Gu Jiao had already impatiently gone to find her own competition platform. The arenas were randomly arranged. There was no such thing as an exclusive arena. She was arranged to be in the West Arena. When Gu Jiao first came to the underground arena, the battle in the West Arena left the deepest impression on her. It was bloody and brutal. Gu Jiao seriously suspected that the shirtless man had beaten his opponent to death. Gu Jiao was the first to go up the arena. According to the rules of the underground arena, when one went up to the arena, there would be 2 square plaques on both sides of the arena. The plaques would have the name and rank of the duelist. Usually, they would use a title or an alias. For example, Gu Jiao's plaque had the words, Xiong Batian, no rank. Originally, Gu Jiao wanted to call him Long Outian. But Uncle Ho said that the word Long clashed with the word Tian, so Gu Jiao settled for the next best thing. When he saw this name, Uncle Ho's mouth twitched for a few seconds. Xiong Batian's name was not bad. Everyone thought that it would be a burly man with a face full of beard. But in the end it was a clean and tidy young man. Gu Jiao was tall for a woman, but in the underground arena full of strong men, she was a little petite. Everyone looked again. He didn't even have a rank. He was a newbie. Their interest instantly decreased by half, and they all turned to look at other arenas. This situation changed when Gu Jiao's opponent's plaque was raised. The square plaque read, Blade Mountain Warrior, Level 2 Master. The people who had left came back with a whoosh. Gu Jiao was puzzled. There were Level 4 fighters in the South Arena. Why did they stop for a mere Level 2 fighter? Soon Blade Mountain guest arrived. Gu Jiao understood what was going on. This Knife Mountain Warrior was the bare-chested brawny man she had seen in the West fighting ring. He was extremely violent, and every punch he threw caused the audience to scream. Coming here to watch was for the thrill. Death or not, it was good enough to make one's adrenaline soar. The moment Uncle Ho saw Knife Mountain guest, his face changed. What happened? How could it be him? Didn't you say that you're also a newbie? Surname Zhu. Come out. He rushed into the accounting room to look for the young man surnamed Zhu. Zhu Yun was in the middle of accounting, and did not even lift his eyelids. Why are you so rash? Uncle Ho was so angry that his whole body trembled. You didn't keep your word. How could you arrange this person for him? Didn't you say that he's a newbie? You've already taken the money. Zhu Yun said slowly. Let me correct one thing first. The money was given to the arena. I did not pocket it. Furthermore, anyone within level 3 can fight each other. I did not break the rules of the arena. Uncle Ho clenched his fists. But you said. Zhu Yun said innocently. I did say that, but that person had something to do and could not come. He stood me up. What can I do? The only one who can take his place is Blade Mountain guest. If you're worried that he'll lose, then let him quickly jump off the stage. Blade Mountain guest will not chase someone down. The arena will stop him. All fights in the arena could only take place in the arena. Once someone left the arena, regardless of the reason, the fight would end and the winner would be announced. At this point, no matter how angry Uncle Ho was, Zhu Yun could not argue with him. He had to quickly remind young Master Gu not to fight Blade Mountain guest. Hurry up and admit defeat. He would pay for the money he lost. That's right. Unlike Taiha Martial Arts School, the duelists here would get a share of the money if they won, and a fine if they lost. The fine would be deducted from the initial deposit. After that, the duelists would lose the right to fight in the arena. Gu Jiao's deposit was given by Uncle Ho. Uncle Ho did not plan to ask Gu Jiao for it. As for why Uncle Ho was so nervous, it was because of Blade Mountain Guest's strength. He had come to the arena last month, and in a short month, he had defeated more than 20 masters. He only needed one more fight before he could move up a level. One could only imagine how fierce he would be in this fight. The Knife Mountain Man was so popular that he had surrounded the West fighting ring. Everyone was in high spirits. Old Ho tried his best but could not squeeze his way in. He was so anxious that he jumped in the crowd and waved at Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao saw him and waved back. "Come down." Uncle Ho changed to waving. Seeing that Gu Jiao did not understand, he pointed at Blade Mountain Guest, then pointed at Gu Jiao, and made a throat-slitting gesture. It meant, "He will kill you. Come down quickly." Gu Jiao made a no sound and made an okay gesture. "Hurry up and KO this Blade Mountain Guest, then rush to the next fight." Okay, she understood. Old He did not understand what this gesture was, but Gu Jiao nodded at him. She should have understood what he meant, right? The gongs and drums sounded, and the duel began. Everyone let out a fanatical cry. "Blade Mountain Guest! Blade Mountain Guest! Blade Mountain Guest!" Blade Mountain Guest moved his neck, clenched his fists, and walked towards Gu Jiao with contempt. Uncle Ho was anxious. "Why are you still not coming down? Come down! Come down! Come down quickly!" Sigh. "Why are you in such a hurry?" "Okay, as you wish." Gu Jiao tiptoed, and her body flew up like a swan. She threw a punch at Blade Mountain Guest. Blade Mountain Guest also showed his hammer-like fist. There was a bang, and someone fell to the ground. The shouts came to an abrupt end, and the audience gasped in shock. The one who fell to the ground was not the skinny little boy, but the mighty and majestic Blade Mountain Guest. One punch. He only threw one punch. Blade Mountain Guest fell, and Gu Jiao's body also landed lightly. She knelt on one knee, and her fist pressed against the floor of the arena as she landed beside Blade Mountain Guest. The arena was silent, and even Uncle Ho was mute. Did he see wrongly? The one who fell was young Master Gu, right? How could Blade Mountain Guest fall? He had not fought yet, and he did not want to come out. Uncle Ho pinched himself, and the pain made him cry. He finally accepted the fact that Blade Mountain Guest had been defeated by Gu Jiao with one punch. While everyone was still in a daze, he squeezed through the crowd and came to the edge of the arena. He said to the judge, "Why aren't you hitting the gong? She won. She won." Uncle Ho was worried that Blade Mountain Guest had lost his footing and would get up and beat Gu Jiao down. He wanted to end the fight quickly, so that Blade Mountain Guest would not be able to attack again. It turned out that Uncle Ho worried too much. After the judge hit the gong, he could not wake Blade Mountain Guest up. In the end, he called 2 people from the arena to carry him down. Uncle Ho was soaked in cold sweat. This was too exciting. After this, Gu Jiao fought 2 more matches. Her opponents were not as strong as Blade Mountain Guest, and she won easily. One person could fight 3 matches a day, and that was the limit of the arena. Gu Jiao could not fight anymore, and she could only sigh and leave the arena. It was not that she liked to fight, but this was the best way to recover her strength from her previous life. Moreover, she could also make some money. This time there were not many people who bet on her, so the odds were very high. However, because her rank was low, she did not get much money, so she only got 10 taels of silver. Gu Jiao was not in a hurry. She put away the silver, adjusted the mask on her face, and turned to leave the accounting room. "This guy is not bad," Zhu Yun said with a smile. Gu Jiao did not plan to stay in the arena for long. She promised little Jing Kong in the morning that she would go to the Imperial College in the afternoon to pick him up after school. She walked out of the arena. When she was about to reach the door, a young man dressed as a guard came in front of her and blocked her way. "Xiong." He wanted to call her Xiong Batian, but he was too ashamed to say it. He gritted his teeth and said, "Young Master Xiong, my master invites you." Gu Jiao was about to say no, but she remembered that she was a little mute. She took out her little notebook helplessly. At this time, she was envious of Gu Qingfeng's voice-changing skill. If she could learn how to speak like a man, wouldn't it be much easier? However, after this delay, Gu Jiao changed her mind. She scribbled silver. The guard was stunned. Gu Jiao wrote seriously, I won't go if you don't pay. Appearance fee, 10 taels of silver. The guard was speechless. His master had ordered that he must invite her. The guard reluctantly took out 10 taels of silver. Gu Jiao pocketed the silver and left very respectfully. She did not expect it to be another room with a gourd hanging on it. Gu Jiao had already asked around. This kind of room with a gourd hanging on it usually belonged to the top 30 masters. Of course, these rooms could be obtained through special means. For example, if you bought the master, you could also get the right to use this room. Gu Jiao thought of Gu Changqing. She did not know which type he belonged to. Gu Jiao entered the room. The man in the room was wearing a brown brocade robe and a jade mask. This kind of mask looked good, but it was too heavy. It would easily fall off in a fight. It seemed that this man did not come to the martial arts arena to fight. This room was most likely obtained by buying the master. Young hero Xiong, please sit. The man politely pointed to the chair next to him. As soon as he spoke, Gu Jiao recognized who he was. She did not expect this underground martial arts arena to have so many hidden masters. The Marquis's heir Gu Changqing and the Prince of Zhao Country, Qin Chuhan, also came. Qin Chuhan was Prince Ning. Gu Jiao recognized Prince Ning, but Prince Ning did not recognize Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao sat down quietly. Young hero Xiong, do you want to drink wine or tea? Prince Ning politely asked. Gu Jiao took out a small notebook and wrote seriously. I'm still young. I can't drink wine. Prince Ning was stunned. His eyes seemed to say, You're still young. How can you come to such a dangerous place to fight? Prince Ning was experienced. He could handle this kind of child. He smiled and said, Okay, bring the tea. A servant served Gu Jiao tea. Soon Gu Jiao found a problem. The mask did not show the mouth. In other words, she had to take off the mask if she wanted to drink tea. Wait. Was Prince Ning being polite to her, or testing her to take off the mask? Gu Jiao wrote, I don't like to drink this kind of tea. Prince Ning smiled and said, What kind of tea does young hero Xiong like? He probably thought that no matter how expensive Gu Jiao said the tea was, he could get it. Gu Jiao wrote expressionlessly, follicle. Prince Ning was speechless. I didn't treat you well. Next time, I'll get someone to prepare. Prince Ning looked at the 3 words and doubted whether there was really such a thing called follicle. He recovered quickly and said gently, Young hero Xiong, is this your first day in the arena? You fought well. I admire young hero Xiong. I want to be friends with you. I forgot to tell you that my surname is Chu. Gu Jiao, I don't believe you. Prince Ning's tone was easygoing and his expression was gentle. Young hero Xiong, are you a native of the capital? Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows and wrote quickly. What? If not, are you going to buy me a house? Prince Ning was speechless again. Although it wasn't like he couldn't afford to give her a house. When someone asked him to do so, it made him feel very awkward. Prince Ning took a sip of tea and smiled. If, young hero Batian. He almost couldn't say the name. If you don't have a place to live, you can come to my house first. Gu Jiao wrote. I don't live under someone else's roof. Prince Ning smiled. How is this living under someone else's roof? If young hero Xiong is willing, you can be my guard. Then you'll be a member of my house. I'll give you a separate house. The scenery in my house is very good. Young hero Xiong might consider it. Many people wanted to be a guard of Prince Ning's house. Moreover, guards were also divided into ranks. There had never been a guard who lived alone. Prince Ning waited for Gu Jiao to ask about his identity. But was it an illusion? Why did he feel that there was a little disdain in her eyes? Gu Jiao curled her lips. After so long, she only gave him a small house. Rinshou Palace was unobstructed. Who cared about Prince Ning's house? Gu Jiao got up and left. The guard stopped Gu Jiao. Our young master hasn't finished speaking. Gu Jiao waved her hand and wrote. 10 taels of silver is up. If you listen to him again, you'll have to raise the price. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. https://www ZHHBQG. com/89642_8964286/111075279. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 380. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. King Ning was considering whether he should raise the price or not. Why did he have to think about it? It was not that he couldn't afford it, but that this young man didn't play by the rules. He felt that it was meaningless to continue the discussion. Although he didn't raise the price because of this consideration, it was inevitable that people would suspect that he was stingy and unwilling to raise the price. The embarrassment of being dominated by the words, "Are you going to buy me a house?" came up again. It was the first time they met, and the ability and mutual trust shown by this young man were not worth a house. But in the end, it always gave people an illusion that King Ning was stingy and couldn't afford the house. King Ning had lived for more than 20 years, and it was the first time that he had experienced such a situation where he was unwilling to accept the situation and retreated. King Ning took a deep breath, opened his mouth, and was about to say something. Gu Jiao raised her small hand coldly, and made a gesture to stop him. Then she wrote in her small notebook, "The time to consider is over. Goodbye." King Ning was stunned. What did she mean by the time to consider was over? He just hesitated for a moment. How could even the right to choose be terminated? It was always him who stopped others, and no one stopped him. The lethality of this sentence was more terrible than, "Are you going to buy me a house?" Or if you listen to him again, you have to raise the price. Originally, he planned to leave Gu Jiao hanging and frustrate Gu Jiao's spirit. That way, he wouldn't be in such a passive situation when they talked next time. But who would have thought that she didn't even give him a chance to raise the price? King Ning only felt that he had been hit in the chest with a hammer, and a sentence floated in his mind. He should have raised the price earlier. Gu Jiao did what she said. After writing that sentence, she put away her small notebook and left without looking back. No matter how King Ning's guards urged her to stay, she didn't change her mind. King Ning was unlikely to be rough with her. He clenched his fists, resisted the slight trembling of his body, and finally asked her, "When will young hero Xiong come next time?" Gu Jiao did not answer. She had already walked out. Prince Ning leaned back in his chair and panted heavily. He was not too angry. After all, he was a young man of Jianghu. It was inevitable that he would have some arrogance. Prince Ning was not so narrow-minded. He would not be like the crown prince, who would feel offended by someone who did not respect him. He had always been tolerant of such talented advisors and chivalrous men of the world. But today Prince Ning wanted to say that he wasn't angry, but his heart had been stabbed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. How could there be such a weird person? He didn't reveal his identity, so it wasn't strange that the other party was so bold. What was strange was that this method of choking people was unheard of. "Water," King Ning said. The guard hurriedly brought him some tea. Ning Wang drank half the pot in one go before he was finally able to relieve some of the depression in his heart. He said to the guard, "Go and find out who introduced the Xiong Batian." The underground martial arts field was very well hidden. Most people would not be able to find this place. Most people relied on someone familiar to introduce them, or people from the martial arts field to find them. Finding out this information was not difficult. The guard quickly came back and reported, replying to Master, it was a branch manager called Old He. The branch shopkeeper was a respectable name. In fact, they were hired by the underground dojo to recruit people. They usually appeared in the various dojos in the capital, looking for strong martial arts seedlings, and then brought them to the underground dojo. Every person they brought would have a share of the arena's profits in the future. Prince Ning gave the guard a bag of silver. "Go and tell him that the next time Xiong Batian comes, tell him to come to my residence and inform me." "Yes," the guard replied. The residence that Prince Ning was talking about was not his own residence. It was another residence. Prince Ning would not easily reveal his identity. The guard went to find old He while thinking that this Xiong was really a little troublemaker. After following his master for so long, he had never seen him choke like this before. Prince Ning was the most outstanding and calm among all the princes. He was both intelligent and courageous. He was highly talented, and was the role model of all the princes. His performance today was indeed a little unexpected. He had to go back and think about it carefully so that he would not be so passive next time. Gu Jiao came out of the Narcissus Embroidery Building and hired a carriage to go to the Imperial College. The timing was just right. Little Jing Kong had just finished school and ran out with a head full of sweat. The students in the elementary school had already figured out his pattern. He was usually more aloof than the teachers. Once he became a 3-year-old child, he would definitely be the older sister at home. Gu Jiao was standing under a big tree by the roadside, thinking about how she should charge the next time Prince Ning came to her. The Zhuang family was so rich. As the grandson of Grand Tutor Zhuang, Prince Ning should not lack money. This was a pot of golden leek. She had to harvest it well. Jiao. Little Jing Kong threw himself at Gu Jiao and hugged Gu Jiao's thigh. Gu Jiao stopped thinking for a second and looked at the little dumpling who had turned into a pendant on her leg. She picked him up and looked at his sweaty face. She asked, "Did you run a race again today? You're sweating so much." "I learned Kuju today," Little Jing Kong said cutely. Gu Jiao had seen Kuju in the grassland of the Qinghe Academy before. It was similar to soccer in her previous life. The ball was kicked into the goal. The only difference was that soccer's goal was called a goal. It was very big and there were 2 goals on the ground. Kuju's goal was called a romantic eye. It was very small, and there was only one in the sky. Moreover, there was no net in the romantic eye. In short, Kuju was a very popular sport in the 6 nations. Gu Jiao took out a handkerchief. Little Jing Kong obediently stretched his little head over. "How's it going? Do you know how to kick?" Gu Jiao asked while wiping his sweat. Little Jing Kong nodded vigorously. Yes. I'm very good at it. I almost kicked it into the romantic eye." The small empty space was half the size of the Kuju court. Little Jing Kong was not to be blamed. He was too small and his arms and legs were too short. When he kicked, he fell down before he could kick the Kuju ball. Moreover, the romantic eye was set according to the height of most children. They ranged from 6 to 8 years old. Although he was already 4 years old, Little Jing Kong looked like he was only 3.5 years old. He was at a disadvantage. After that, he almost never touched Kuju, because no one passed it to him anymore. The little guy was also very frustrated. The corners of Gu Jiao's lips curled up. "Is it really good?" Little Jing Kong's eyes were as big as a bull's. Really? I've been kicking it. Jing Kong, do you want to come to my house to play Kuju?" In the carriage by the roadside, Su Dangsong waved at Jing Kong. Little Jing Kong's eyes flashed. He put his little hands behind his back. No, it's not very fun. He refused to admit that he was not good at it, and could not even touch Kuju. Su Dangsong was not in the same class as him, so she did not know that he almost did not touch Kuju today. Su Dangsong waved her hand. "Okay, then I'll go first. Tell me what you like to play next time. I'll play with you." "Okay." Little Jing Kong answered vaguely. After Gu Jiao wiped Little Jing Kong's sweat, she held his hand and went back to Qingshui Alley. After they went back, Gu Jiao made a Kuju ball for Little Jing Kong. She also took down the shelf where she dried the herbs, and made a romantic eye beside the crabapple tree in the backyard. It was slightly bigger than the one in the academy, and was at a height suitable for Little Jing Kong. Little Jing Kong came out after finishing his homework, and saw the Kuju ball on the threshold. Wow! His big eyes lit up and his eyelashes fluttered. His little eyelash fairy was just like this. He bent down, picked up Kuju with his small hands, and ran towards the rear courtyard. He saw the flirtatious eyes, who was obviously shorter than the directorate, and pounced over excitedly. He put down the Kuju ball, tiptoed and hugged the big romantic eye. Xiao Lulang went on a business trip again. This time he was in the capital. The Examination Institute was holding a random examination for some of the officials of the 6 ministries. The examination would last for 3 days. As one of the invigilators, Xiao Lulang would enter the examination institute with the officials. It was not the first time Xiao Lulang came to the examination institute. However, he used to sit in the examination shed, but now he was sitting in the invigilator's seat. He did not need to mark the papers. After the examination 3 days later, he could leave with the officials. Xiao Lulang was not at home. Gu Jiao went to the underground martial arts arena again the next day. Uncle He took the money from Prince Ning's bodyguard, but he did not immediately send the message to Prince Ning. Instead, he found Gu Jiao and told her about it. This kind of thing was not rare in the martial arts arena. Many big shots would secretly bribe masters. However, these big shots were all famous in the capital. Generally, they would not let the people in the martial arts arena know their true identity. If you want to see him, I'll send the message to him now. If you don't want to see him, I'll walk slowly. When the message arrived, Gu Jiao had already left. This was not a dereliction of duty. He only promised to send the message, but not to keep Gu Jiao here. Gu Jiao made a no sound. It's fine. Go send the message. The sooner the better. Gu Jiao fought 2 matches in the afternoon. She did not arrange for the 3rd match because there was no suitable opponent. The underground martial arts arena had a rule. You could not fight someone 3 levels higher than you. In other words, Gu Jiao, who did not have a rank, could only fight with a level 2 master. The bladesman was the first master that Gu Jiao fought. She thought that he would be the appetizer. Who would have thought that he would be the hardest dish? It was no wonder that the bladesman was so popular. There were not many people below level 3 who were stronger than him. At least, the 4 masters that Gu Jiao fought later were not as good as him. After Gu Jiao defeated the bladesman, she gained a bit of fame in the underground martial arts arena. Today, there were finally a few more people who bet on her victory. Unfortunately, she only received 10 taels of silver. No matter. If the money was not enough, the leeks would make up for it. See, the leeks were here. Gu Jiao stepped down from the arena. Ning Wang personally walked up to the arena. He had changed his clothes, but the jade mask on his face was still the same as yesterday. His mask could only show his mouth and chin. He smiled and said, "Young hero Xiong, we meet again. I watched the 2 matches just now. You played even better than yesterday. Do you have time to come in?" Gu Jiao took out the price list that she had already written in a small notebook. She handed it to him. 50 taels of silver for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. The guard's eyebrows twitched. It was not 10 taels yesterday. Gu Jiao wrote, "The price has increased." Guard. Ning Wang. The time it takes to burn a stick of incense was about half an hour in her previous life. It was not more, not less. It was the price that Gu Jiao could accept. The guard behind Ning Wang twitched his mouth. "You are raising the price." Gu Jiao. "Congratulations, you got it right." Ning Wang also felt that the price was too high. It should be known that 50 taels of silver was enough to buy a master outside. However, with the lesson of the past, Ning Wang did not dare to hesitate today. Moreover, with his wealth, 50 taels of silver was not worth mentioning. Okay. He agreed. Gu Jiao accepted the money before entering the room with him. Ning Wang had just sat down when he saw Gu Jiao light an incense stick on the table. Ning Wang. "Young hero Xiong, to be honest, I came to find you not only to make friends with you, but also to make a deal with you." Making a deal was the strategy that Ning Wang came up with last night. Since this young man called Xiong Batian was so greedy, then he would use money to make him bend. There was no need to force him to come to his side as a guard. Gu Jiao quickly wrote, "The deal will be charged separately. The fee will not change." Ning Wang's mouth twitched and he smiled. "Of course, I will not treat young hero Xiong unfairly." In another room with a gourd hanging, a luxuriously dressed man and a fairy-like woman slowly sat down. They had just arrived. They had something to do today, so they came a little late. "Is there Knife Mountain guest today?" The woman wearing a veil asked. The servant said, "Madam, Knife Mountain guest was injured in a fight yesterday. He can't get out of bed today." "Oh, he's injured?" The woman was surprised. Who injured him? In the woman's impression, Knife Mountain guest should be unrivaled in his current level. The servant said, A new young man. He looks weak, but his moves are very powerful. He defeated Knife Mountain Guess with one move, and then won 3 matches in a row. Winning 3 matches in a row was nothing, but to defeat Knife Mountain Guess with one punch was beyond the woman's expectations. Your Highness. The woman looked at the man. The man asked, "Where is that young man?" The servant thought for a moment and said, "He just finished the fight. It seems that he was called away." The man said, "Go see if he left. If he hasn't left, bring him to see me." The woman looked at him worriedly. "Your Highness." The man held her hand and smiled. "Linlang, don't worry. I will send someone to take you to the Yin Kingdom." The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964226/111045604. HTML Genius memorized the website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 381. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are available here. Gu Jiao learned from King Ning that the top 3 masters in the underground arena were qualified to go to the Yin Kingdom to compete, and could bring others with them. Gu Jiao knew the relationship between the Zhao Kingdom and the Yin Kingdom. The Yin Kingdom was a superior country. Without the Yin Kingdom's permission, even the emperor of the Zhao Kingdom couldn't go there easily. However, a small underground arena was qualified to send masters to the Yin Kingdom. Nominally, it was a competition, but in fact it was an opportunity to win them over. Such arenas existed in all the 6 countries. The Yin Kingdom's method was too simple and crude. King Ning said, "The first and second masters haven't appeared for many years. There is no chance to compete with them. The third master has only come to the arena recently." King Ning's meaning was obvious. Gu Jiao only needed to defeat the third master. "I believe in young hero Xiong's strength." Gu Jiao didn't believe that. He only said this to her. She was afraid that he was casting a net and focusing on training her. In addition, Gu Jiao extracted a message from their conversation. King Ning wanted to go to the Yin Kingdom. "Young hero Xiong, what do you think?" King Ning asked. Gu Jiao glanced at the incense on the table and stood up. She signaled with her eyes that time was up. King Ning almost choked to death. After Gu Jiao left, the guard looked around warily at the door and returned to King Ning's side to report. "Your Highness, someone was watching us nearby just now." "Has he left?" King Ning asked. "Yes." The guard nodded. King Ning's eyes dimmed. "Did you see who it was?" The guard shook his head. "I didn't see his face clearly, but I felt that his figure was familiar. He seemed to be one of the Crown Prince's men." King Ning picked up the teacup. "So the Crown Prince is here too?" The guard looked nervous. "Did the Crown Prince find us?" King Ning wasn't worried at all. He took a sip of tea. "It doesn't matter. He has no evidence. Be careful next time. Don't let others watch us." "Yes." However, that servant wandered around Prince Ning's room to no avail, and asked the manservant guarding the door before reporting to the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. "I was a step too late. That person has already left." "Gone." The Crown Prince frowned, looking very displeased. The Crown Princess asked, "Did you find out who he is? Who invited him over just now?" "His name is Xiong Batian, and I don't know who invited him to the east side of the house." The servant reported the information he had gathered. The Crown Princess looked in the direction of his finger and saw a gourd hanging on the roof. She understood that the other person's identity was not simple. The man asked strangely, "Why would someone have such a terrible name?" "It should be an alias." The servant said, "The people here don't use their real names." The crown princess paused for a moment before continuing. Then go and find out who brought Xiong here. Yes. The servant responded and turned to leave the room. The crown princess sighed, lowered her eyes, and picked up the teacup. The crown prince looked at her with heartache. Linlang, don't be sad. He's just a new master. There are others. I can always find someone to get into the top 3 and bring you to the Yin Kingdom to see old Mr. Meng. The crown princess lowered her eyes. Your Highness, am I being selfish? I'm the crown princess of the Zhao Kingdom. I have enough. Why should I hope to see old Mr. Meng? The crown prince said seriously. How can you be selfish? Isn't it right for you to see old Mr. Meng? You broke old Mr. Meng's chess game. If old Mr. Meng knows about it, he will appreciate you. The Yin Kingdom hasn't replied yet. I guess the news hasn't reached old Mr. Meng. When you go to the Yin Kingdom and see him, everything will be solved. I know you want to be old Mr. Meng's disciple. I will help you. The crown princess' eyes were filled with tears. I'm not going to the Yin Kingdom just to see old Mr. Meng. I want to see the culture of the Yin Kingdom. I want to know what the strongest country is like. I want to learn how the Yin Kingdom's monarch rules the country, so that I can better assist your Highness when I return. The crown prince was moved. Linlang, you're so nice. The crown princess smiled. Your Highness is my husband. This is what I should do. I heard about that young hero just now. I feel that this young hero called Xiong is young and promising. He has great potential. The crown prince said, since you say so, I'll go and invite him properly. The crown princess said earnestly, it's inevitable for a youth from the pugilistic world to have some pugilistic spirit. It's not impossible to be young and frivolous. Your Highness, remember to treat people with courtesy. Don't let the incident with Bai Nu happen again. At the mention of this, a trace of unnaturalness flashed across the crown prince's eyes. Bai Nu was a Turkic expert. He was extremely strong and swift. He was ranked 39th on the ranking list. The crown princess asked the crown prince to win him over. In the end, he said a few arrogant words to the crown prince, and the crown prince punished him for being disrespectful. This incident happened outside the martial arts arena. The arena itself did not interfere. However, the Turkic expert spread the news, causing them to lose a few experts who disliked the crown prince's actions. The crown prince coughed lightly and said, don't worry. I won't use my status to pressure him this time. I'll talk to him calmly. Gu Jiao did not know that she was being targeted again. It was still early. It was not yet time for school to end in Little Jing Kong. She went back to the medical center after leaving the Narcissus embroidery building. She entered from the back door, and did not let anyone see her. She entered her courtyard, took off her mask, washed up, and changed into her usual clothes. Just as she was done, there was a commotion outside the courtyard. Why did you bump into me? It was a little girl's voice. Who bumped into you? You were the one who bumped into me. It was a man's voice. It sounded familiar, like Gu Qingfeng's. Bumblebee. Cylinder. That's right. In the backyard of the medical center, Gu Qingfeng, who came to buy hair growth medicine for his younger brother, bumped into Yuan Tong, who accompanied her elder sister to the clinic. This encounter was like a needle against an awn. Yuan Tong's eyes widened. You did bump into me on purpose. I didn't expect a man like you to be so narrow-minded. You're bullying a woman. Gu Qingfeng raised his right foot in anger. Who bullied you? Look at my shoe. You were the one who stepped on me. I didn't say anything, but you're accusing me of bumping into you. You're being unreasonable. Yuan Tong took a closer look. There was indeed a shoe print on it. Her eyes flashed and she stuttered. Who told you not to look at where you're walking? Gu Qingfeng chuckled. I don't look at where I'm walking. Fine, even if I don't, you should have eyes. Why didn't you dodge? So you saw that I didn't have eyes, so you purposely stepped on my foot and bumped into me. Gu Qingfeng didn't mean anything else, but in Yuan Tong's ears, it sounded like she was shameless, unreserved, and purposely trying to attract his attention. Yuan Tong was furious. You're shameless. Gu Qingfeng coldly said. Who's shameless? Yuan Tong huffed. Who's the shameless one? You humph? Yuan Tong, come back. At the back door of the hall, The pale-faced Taoist nun spoke to Yuan Tong with the help of a maid. Yuan Tong turned around and walked over with a pale face. Elder sister, why did you get off the carriage? Didn't I tell you to wait in the carriage? I'll go get Miss Gu for you. Gu Chengfeng had no grudge against the Taoist nun. Seeing that she was so ill, he didn't want to argue with her younger sister. He snorted and turned around to leave. Gu Jiao came out just as he arrived at the door of the small courtyard. Gu Jiao had already seen the Taoist nun. Her expression didn't look right. Gu Chengfeng cleared his throat. You can go treat the patient first. I'm not in a hurry. Gu Jiao nodded. The consultation room was full at the moment. Gu Jiao had Yuan Tong help the Taoist nun into her courtyard. Gu Jiao couldn't go in, so he waited in the hall for a while. He didn't want to rush her since she wasn't in a hurry, so he waited in the hall, bored to death. The Taoist nun lay on the bed in the side room, her hands clutching her stomach. Cold sweat poured down her face. Where are you feeling unwell? Gu Jiao asked her. The Taoist nun glanced at the maid and Yuan Tong, who were standing by the side. Gu Jiao turned around. You can leave first. I'm not used to people watching me when I treat patients. Yuan Tong opened her mouth. Oh, then I'll leave my sister in your care. Gu Jiao nodded. Yuan Tong and the little servant girl retreated. Gu Jiao looked at the Taoist nun again. Can you tell me where you're feeling unwell now? The Taoist nun hesitated, as if she was too embarrassed to speak. After a while she muttered, My stomach hurts. Let me take a look. Gu Jiao took her wrist and began to feel her pulse. The Taoist nun lost her usual composure when she saw Gu Jiao's silence. She bit her lip and whispered, Am I going to have a miscarriage? A miscarriage? Gu Jiao wondered if she had heard wrong. Gu Jiao looked at the Taoist nun's wrist, then at her face. The Taoist nun's eyes reddened and she burst into tears. I knew it. I'm going to have a miscarriage. My baby is gone. Gu Jiao didn't know what to say. Wait, what did I miss? The little Taoist nun cried very sadly. She sobbed and hiccuped, causing Gu Jiao to listen for a long time before she understood the whole story. It turned out that something indescribable had happened between Gu Changqing and the Taoist nun in the carriage on the day they were rescued. I started it. I tore his clothes. I couldn't control myself. I. My period hasn't come for 2 months. This morning, I suddenly had a stomachache. And I was bleeding. Of course you would have stomachache and bleed when you were on your period. Gu Jiao looked at her with an indescribable expression. You're just having an irregular menstrual period. You're not pregnant, Gu Jiao said. The Taoist nun cried. I don't believe it. I'm already riding on him. Gu Jiao was dumbfounded. Was it really that shocking? You're really not pregnant. You didn't have a miscarriage. You don't have to comfort me. I know, the baby is gone, sob. Gu Jiao didn't know what to say. She had been a doctor for 2 lifetimes, but this was the first time anyone had questioned her skills. Forget it, whoever started the trouble should end it. Gu Jiao called Gu Chengfeng over and told him to bring Gu Changqing here. Gu Jiao didn't say anything, so Gu Chengfeng didn't expect it to be related to the Yuan family. Coincidentally, Gu Changqing was in the manor today, so Gu Chengfeng quickly brought him over. Gu Jiao used the excuse of buying medicine and food to send Yuan Tong and the maids away, then brought Gu Changqing into the courtyard. Gu Jiao also wanted to enter the room, but Gu Chengfeng mercilessly refused. In the side room, the Taoist nun had cried herself to sleep. Gu Jiao told her situation to Gu Changqing. Gu Changqing had not expected that this matter would be brought to the surface in such a way. His face, which had never changed in 10,000 years, instantly turned red. There's no such thing. He took a deep breath and pinched his fingers. I didn't do it with her. Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. Oh, you only touched and rubbed? No. Gu Changqing wanted to say that he didn't, but he choked on his words. He turned around, his face red as he said seriously, Anyway, she won't get pregnant. She's still a virgin. Men always knew more about this than women. Gu Jiao didn't doubt the reliability of Gu Changqing's words. She pointed at him and said, Then you explain it to her yourself. It's getting late. I have to go pick up little Jing Kong. She carried the small basket on her back and left without hesitation. Gu Changqing wanted to call her, but didn't have time to stop her. Gu Changqing was in the room. He didn't know whether to stand or sit. No one knew what kind of shame and torment he went through while waiting for the Taoist nun to wake up. What happened that day was indeed an accident. He didn't want to get married in this lifetime. However, they did have physical contact. If she couldn't get over it like Gu Jinyu, then he would take responsibility for her and propose marriage. But after she woke up, she said she didn't want to get married. This matter became a secret between the two of them. Who would have thought? She thought she could get pregnant like that. And she cried when she had a miscarriage. Could it be that she planned to give birth to the child in secret? Without telling him at all? He was the father of the child. No, there was no child. He was almost led astray. Gu Changqing helplessly pinched the space between his eyebrows. At this moment, the Taoist nun on the bed slowly woke up. She was still immersed in the great sorrow of losing her baby. When she saw Gu Changqing, she didn't care that she didn't have any feelings for this man. She suddenly felt very wronged and grabbed Gu Changqing's hand. Sob sob, our baby is gone. Grand Secretary Yuan, who had rushed over after receiving the news, had just arrived at the door when he heard this sentence. Grand Secretary Yuan. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated even faster. Millions of novels will be read for free. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111045022. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. Chapter 382. This book's newest chapter is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. What had happened? He had just gone out on a business trip, and when he came back, his granddaughter had even given birth to a baby? No, it was gone again. He had just become a great-grandfather and his little great-grandson was gone. No, the main point was off. How could he have a little great-grandson? Wasn't Yuan Baolin not married yet? That was Baolin's voice. He hadn't misheard, right? Even if he had misheard, this little Taoist nun holding a man's hand was still his family's little Taoist nun, right? He couldn't be blind, right? Grand Secretary Yuan finally came back to his senses. Not only had he heard it, he had even ing caught her in the act. Who was this stinky brat? Before Gu Jiao left, she had already told Gu Changqing about the little Taoist nun's illness. However, hearing someone else say it was one matter. Hearing the little Taoist nun personally complain to him was another matter. She held his hand, large tears falling down. That genuine pain of losing a child shocked Gu Changqing. Just as he was shocked speechless, a murderous aura suddenly shot out from behind him. Gu Changqing turned his head and saw Grand Secretary Yuan standing in the doorway in a rage. Gu Changqing's heart thumped. He almost instinctively pulled back his hand. Unfortunately, it was too late. Grand Secretary Yuan had seen everything he should have seen and heard everything he should have heard. Grand Secretary Yuan charged into the room with murderous aura. Arriving at the bedside, he stood between the two. Gu Changqing consciously moved back a few steps. Who are you? Grand Secretary Yuan sternly asked. The capital's social circle was very large. The Yuan family and Marquis Ding's manor had very little interaction. Grand Secretary Yuan had only seen the old Marquis in the throne room. Last time in Jade Water Alley, Gu Changqing was in the dark, while Grand Secretary Yuan was in the light. This caused Gu Changqing to secretly see him, while he did not see Gu Changqing. It's over now. Even if I jump into the Yellow River, I won't be able to clear my name. Gu Changqing cupped his hands in greeting. This one is Ding and Marquis Manor's Gu Changqing. Greetings to Grand Secretary Yuan. Grand Secretary Yuan narrowed his eyes dangerously. Gu Chongqing. Gu Chao's grandson? Yes. Gu Chongqing cupped his hands, not daring to look straight at Grand Secretary Yuan's face. This was the etiquette of the younger generation. And it was also him who made him feel a bit stupefied and lacking in confidence. Grand Secretary Yuan then thought of the latter part of his words. You recognize me? Yes. Gu Chongqing did not deny it. Now that things had developed to this point, there was no way to hide it anymore. Grand Secretary Yuan wasn't stupid. That day's events were a bit strange to begin with. But since Yuan Baolin insisted that she was fine, he didn't take it to heart. Thinking about it now, it was likely that Yuan Baolin was not saved by Ding and Manner's Madame Gu. Grand Secretary Yuan's gaze turned cold. It's you? You took Pauline away? You took advantage of her. Once he thought of his own granddaughter leaving the wolf's den of Royal Prince and jumping into the tiger's den of Gu Chongqing, and being bullied to the point of having a child. Grand Secretary Yuan hated that he couldn't slaughter this stinky brat on the spot. Gu Chongqing had no way to defend himself. If it was anyone else, they might have been able to cleanly refuse, but Gu Chongqing did not have that kind of personality. At this time, the old Marquis had also rushed over after hearing the news. Once he heard that his own grandson had gotten someone pregnant, the old Marquis was so angry that one Buddha was born and 2 Buddhas ascended to the heavens. If this was another girl's home, the old Marquis would not have believed it so easily, but the other party was Grand Secretary Yuan's granddaughter. In addition, Gu Chongqing had tacitly agreed. It was clear that he was entangled with the girl. He pulled out his whip and swung it at Gu Chongqing's body. The little Taoist nun's face turned pale. She reached out a hand to stop the old Marquis while choking with sobs. Don't hit him. It's not his fault. It's me. I forced myself on him. I forced myself on him. The old Marquis, whose hand trembled as the whip struck his own head. Grand Secretary Yuan, who also seemed to have been struck in the face by an invisible whip. As well as Gu Chongqing, who even though he had been cleared of his crime, he still wished he hadn't been. He might as well smash him to death with a wall. Gu Chongqing had military matters to attend to and would be heading to Fengdu Mountain soon. Just now, he had been packing his luggage in the courtyard. If it wasn't for Gu Chengfeng saying that Gu Jiao wanted to see him, he wouldn't have come at all. Now things were great. It wasn't that he couldn't wash himself clean even if he jumped into the Yellow River, but that he couldn't wash himself clean even if he peeled off a layer of his skin. Grand Secretary Yuan learned about the ins and outs of the matter from his granddaughter's mouth, and confirmed that this brat had not taken advantage of his granddaughter in the slightest. Instead, it was his granddaughter who had taken advantage of him quite a bit. Grand Secretary Yuan felt quite apologetic. He apologized to the old Marquis. The old Marquis obviously wasn't angry. No matter how he looked at it, it was still this brat who had taken advantage of him. This brat was someone who practiced martial arts, so he could clearly knock him out with a single palm strike. Since he didn't do that, it meant that he also had a bit of interest in young Miss Yuan, right? Good brat, no wonder he always ignored him when he tried to matchmake him. So it turned out he had secretly taken a fancy to young Miss Yuan? This young Miss Yuan was truly outstanding, not someone an ordinary aristocratic family's young miss could compare to. Take this matter for example. If it was anyone else, they definitely wouldn't have the courage to shoulder all the blame on themselves, resolutely not making things difficult for Gu Chongqing. How could the old Marquis know that the reason why Gu Chongqing didn't knock Yuan Baolin unconscious was because the drug Yuan Baolin was too strong, making it difficult for her to breathe? If she really did faint, it might cause her to suffocate to death. This junior still has matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Gu Chongqing cupped his hands in greeting towards Grand Secretary Yuan, and also gave the old Marquis an indifferent greeting before turning around to leave the room. The little Taoist nun chased after him. Don't worry, young Miss Yuan. I won't agree to this marriage. He knew she didn't want to marry him. I won't agree either. She also knew that he didn't want to marry her at all. She couldn't let him shoulder the pressure alone. Gu Chongqing thought she had chased after him precisely because of this matter. Since they had made things clear, it was time for him to leave. Farewell. He turned around to leave. Wait! The little Taoist nun called out to him. Gu Chongqing stopped in his tracks and turned around to look at her. Young Miss Yuan, is there something else you're worried about? I really? The little Taoist nun's eyes drifted as she rubbed her belly. Gu Chongqing's gaze swept over her small movements. He opened his mouth and sighed. You're not pregnant. You can't get pregnant at that level. The little Taoist nun furrowed her brows in confusion. But I clearly. Gu Chongqing used up all the face he had in his lifetime. Pregnancy requires a man's cooperation. The little Taoist nun muttered. It's all written in those novels. When a woman is drugged and pushes a man down, she'll have a child. Gu Chongqing asked strangely, You're a Taoist nun. Why do you read romance novels? Romance novels could kill people. Gu Chongqing felt there was no way to continue this topic. He planned to leave. The little Taoist nun suddenly glanced at Gu Chongqing sympathetically. Or is it because you can't? It's written in those novels that women can't have children only if men can't do it. Gu Chongqing. Gu Chongqing clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. In the future, don't read those novels again. Gu Jiao didn't know that the matter between Gu Chongqing and the little Taoist nun had already reached the ears of Grand Secretary Yuan and the old Marquis, but Gu Chengfeng knew. He had been hiding in a large tree and had been watching a good show. At first, when Gu Jiao had only let his older brother into the courtyard and blocked him outside, he had sensed that something wasn't right. After eavesdropping, he realized that his older brother looked serious, but he had secretly found a sister-in-law for him. TSK, 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 this speed was worthy of being his older brother. It was a pity that Ling family's younger cousin was going to be hurt. Ling Shuixian was completely in love with his older brother and wouldn't marry anyone else. He heard that she had been on a hunger strike at home recently. Although Ling Shuixian was his younger cousin, he actually didn't like Ling Shuixian. Ling Shuixian was too arrogant and wasn't suited to be Marquis Ding and Fu's heir's wife. The Yuan family's daughter looked more mature than Ling Shuixian, but her way of thinking was a bit hard to explain. Forget it, as long as his older brother liked her. It was a pity that the girl left early and missed this good show. Aya. Gu Chengfeng slapped his head. I still haven't gone to buy medicine from that girl. Gu Chengfeng used his qinggong to go to Jade Water Alley. Gu Jiao had already brought little Jing Kong back from the directorate. Little Jing Kong was currently playing kuju with a few friends in the alley in the backyard. Gu Jiao was drying medicine in the front yard. Gu Chengfeng told Gu Jiao about the development of Gu Chongqing and the little Taoist nun. Based on this progress, we should be able to have a sister-in-law soon. This was the first time he had used this kind of word. He had always understood that this Gu Jiao in front of him wasn't the real Gu Jiao's mother, so when he blurted out these two words, he felt very surprised. Fortunately, Gu Jiao didn't seem to notice his inappropriate choice of words. Gu Jiao grunted and turned the medicine in the sieve. Quite compatible. Gu Chengfeng secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He was relieved that Gu Jiao did not chase after him to ask him how he used them, and if he was in a hurry to be her older brother, or something like that. Of course it's compatible. He was worried that Gu Jiao would come back to her senses, so he quickly changed the topic to the two of them. One is the heir of the Marquis residence, the other is the daughter of the Yuan family. How are they like? He wanted to say, how are they like you and Xiao Lulang? One is the daughter of the Marquis residence, the other is a poor boy from the countryside. But when the words reached his lips, he felt that something was wrong. This girl wasn't the daughter of the Marquis residence. Who knew where she came from, what kind of background she had in that faraway place, and what kind of parents she had? This girl seemed to be a bit pitiful. Gu Jiao didn't know what he was thinking and continued drying the medicine. Right, where's my brother's medicine? Gu Chengfeng asked. Gu Jiao had already taken it out and put it in her purse. She took it out and handed it to him. Gu Chengfeng reached out to take it, but Gu Jiao suddenly took her hand back. Give me the money. Gu Chengfeng had a toothache. You just took 1,000 taels from me last time. Gu Jiao spread her hands. That was the money for the last bottle of medicine. Gu Chengfeng stomped his feet in anger. Go outside and ask around. Which family's medicine is as expensive as yours? Gu Jiao put the medicine back into her purse and patted it, saying, Then, go buy it from whichever family's cheaper. Gu Qingfeng's anger was completely extinguished. Of course, he had tried other people's medicine before. However, not only was it ineffective, but it also made Gu Qinglin's hair fall off. Ever since then, he didn't dare to try other people's medicine. Gu Qinglin wore a hat to school every day. It was very uncomfortable in the hot weather. Gu Qingfeng said bitterly, I didn't bring that much money with me today. He took out his purse and poured out the broken silver and copper coins into his hands. Look, it doesn't even add up to 2 taels. I've been very poor recently. Gu Jiao was silent. Gu Qingfeng continued to act pitiful. I'm not like you who only needs to make a living every day. I have to study during the day, and can only take on some work at night. But recently, there's not much work to do. Gu Jiao nodded. That's quite pitiful. Right? Gu Qingfeng cried that he was poor while secretly glancing at her. How about this? If you help me run an errand, I'll give you a 10% discount on your medicine. That means I'll charge you less than 10%. Gu Qingfeng's face darkened. Shouldn't the routine be, if you help me run an errand, I'll give you this bottle of medicine? How come it was only 10% less? Examination courtyard. Xiao Lulang finished invigilating for the day, and returned to the Jingyi Pavilion with the other invigilators. This was the place where they would rest this time. Their range of activity was from the Jingyi Pavilion to the examination area. They couldn't wander anywhere else. The Jingyi Pavilion was heavily guarded by guards. First, it was to prevent people from colluding with the invigilators to cheat. Second, it was to protect the safety of the invigilators. He was only an invigilator and didn't grade the papers. It was only a bit tiring, but not mentally. The food was sent to the rooms of the invigilators. Not long after he returned to his room, the food was sent over by the guards. Xiao Lulang opened the door, and came to the door. He reached out to take the food box. Many thanks. The moment he took the food box, he inadvertently glanced at the guard. The guard took back his hand and turned to patrol. Xiao Lulang frowned suspiciously. Wasn't this the guard who brought him food in the morning and afternoon? Was it a different person for dinner? Xiao Lulang took the food box into the room. Just like at noon, there were 2 dishes and 1 soup. A plate of braised pork with radish, a plate of cold tofu, a bowl of vegetable and egg drop soup, and 2 large and thick steamed buns. Xiao Lulang took out the food one by one. When he brought out the bowl of egg drop soup, his eyes paused for a moment. The days of the 7th month of the lunar calendar weren't that long. At this time, the sun had completely set and the sky was a greenish gray. The light in the room was a bit dim, but it was still okay to eat. Most people wouldn't light a lamp. Xiao Lulang looked at the bowl of egg drop soup and frowned. He lit an oil lamp and turned the wick to the brightest. He saw that there was some strange powder on 2 or 3 floating green onions. At first glance, this powder looked like seasoning, but Xiao Lulang had cooked before. It was one thing if it tasted bad, but he could recognize seasoning. Xiao Lulang picked out the green onions. The smell of the green onions was too strong. It suppressed the smell of the powder, but the powder itself was enough to make people suspicious. If it wasn't for Xiao Liulang's good eyesight, and if it wasn't for Xiao Liulang's familiarity with seasoning, he would have probably thought that it was an ordinary bowl of egg drop soup and drank it. Xiao Lulang not only didn't drink the egg drop soup, he also didn't touch the other food. The bag that Gu Jiao gave him was filled with fruits and jerky. He had just taken it out when a figure jumped in through the window. Who is it? Xiao Lulang asked vigilantly. It's me. Gu Qingfeng, who was dressed in black, took off his mask. He actually didn't want to reveal his identity, but if he didn't reveal it, how could he make him believe him? Xiao Liulang's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, but it wasn't too surprising. Since Gu Jiao went out with him in the middle of the night, he wasn't just an ordinary weak scholar. Here. Gu Qingfeng threw a bag to Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang opened it, and saw that it was a box of exquisite and delicious pastries. It was still slightly steaming, and it was obvious that it had just been made. Gu Qingfeng snorted. So sour, so sour. Wasn't it just a few days of not coming back? Was it worth it for him to sneak into the tribute institution in the middle of the night to give him pastries? Xiao Lulang looked at the various pastries in the box and gave a low laugh. Gu Qingfeng was so sour that he rolled his eyes. He didn't even eat dinner before running over to give Xiao Lulang pastries. He saw that there was food on the table, so he rolled up his sleeves and picked up a steamed bun. Xiao Lulang hurriedly said, "Wait! You can't eat it." Gu Qingfeng took a bite. "I already ran an errand to give you pastries, and you still can't eat a steamed bun?" Xiao Lulang said, "No, I might have been drugged." Gu Qingfeng hurriedly spat out the steamed bun in his mouth. Pay. There are people who would drug the tribute institution? That's right. How could there be people who would drug the tribute institution? Normal people wouldn't be able to reach into the tribute institution. Even if they did, it would be for the sake of cheating. Who would poison the invigilators? While Xiao Lulang was deep in thought, Gu Qingfeng suddenly said, "It can't be white medicine, right? Was it that old witch who did it? Or it could be black medicine. No. It's useless even if I gave you black medicine or white medicine." Xiao Lulang asked in confusion. "What black medicine or white medicine?" Gu Qingfeng covered his mouth. "Oh no, he spilled the beans." Xiao Lulang stared at him. His eyes weren't cold or scary, but there was a kind of sharpness that made people unable to hide. Gu Qingfeng scratched his head. Forget it. I've already said it. You can ask that girl later. She'll know that I spilled the beans all the same." "What exactly is it?" Xiao Lulang asked. Gu Qingfeng sighed and told him about how Gu Jiao had abducted him to the nunnery to steal the black medicine and white medicine. He also told him about how the emperor had been poisoned by the black medicine and white medicine through Xiao Liulang's silent technique. In the end, the radish was pulled out of the mud, and the imperial edict was also pulled out. Xiao Lulang. Imperial edict? Everyone cared about different things. For Gu Qingfeng, the emperor being drugged was the most shocking thing. However, what shocked Xiao Lulang the most was the imperial edict in Grand Concubine Jing's hands. That was because he had seen that imperial edict before. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online can be found here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428266/111016378. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. Chapter 383. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. He hadn't been born when the late emperor passed away, but he had followed the emperor to visit concubine Jing in the nunnery. He was still young at the time and didn't know what he had accidentally seen. It wasn't until he grew up that he realized it was an imperial edict, and from the content, it seemed to have been left behind by the late emperor. He hadn't mentioned it to anyone. He didn't mention it when he was young because he didn't understand. He didn't mention it when he grew up because he felt it was too serious and didn't want to bring disaster to the Marquis estate. Not long after he had seen the imperial edict, he had been poisoned near Renshaw Palace. He had never linked the two incidents together. Even after he grew up, he didn't think they had anything to do with each other. As for why he didn't suspect concubine Jing of stealing the imperial edict, it was because he would have done the same if it had been him. But he thought that there must be a knot in his heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stopped Gu Jiao from going to the nunnery outside the palace to treat concubine Jing's illness. Perhaps concubine Jing had long discovered that he had seen the imperial edict, which was why she had poisoned him. It wasn't just to frame Empress Dowager Zhuang, but also to silence him. After he had luckily escaped with his life, Marquis Xianping and Princess Xinyang had increased his protection. So concubine Jing had no way to do it. Until Hey, why aren't you talking? Are you scared out of your wits? Gu Chengfeng waved his hand in front of his eyes. What are you talking about? Xiao Lulang came back to his senses. No, I'm just thinking about what you just said. That day he had gone next door to find his teacher, and heard him mention Princess Xinyang to Gu Changqing. His teacher had said that he had something to ask the princess, but he hadn't heard much. He hadn't expected it to be about the imperial edict. He thought it was about concubine Jing. Gu Chengfeng didn't know that he was thinking about the imperial edict, and thought that he was as shocked as he was by concubine Jing's poisoning of the emperor. I knew she was vicious, but I didn't expect her to do it to His Majesty. Even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs. Gee. Gu Chengfeng suddenly realized that he couldn't find the words to describe this old witch. He curled his lips and snorted. It's been hard on the Empress Dowager all these years. His Majesty and her didn't have to go to this step. But I heard that His Majesty's medicine was about to expire, so the old witch went to buy more medicine. I wonder if she has drugged His Majesty recently. Gu Jiao was at the top of the information pyramid, while Gu Chengfeng was ranked second. He still didn't know that concubine Jing had given the emperor the wrong medicine. But soon, he might not even be ranked second. Xiao Lulang paused and said, Wait a moment. I'll write a reply to Jiao Jiao. Gu Chengfeng's face darkened. She only brought you some food, and you still have to reply to her letter. If he were to die one day, it would definitely be because of their jealousy. Xiao Lulang wrote a note for Gu Chengfeng, folded it, and put it in the pouch that Gu Jiao had given him. He didn't use any security measures. First, he trusted Gu Jiao's judgment. If Gu Jiao could let Gu Chengfeng come over, it meant that Gu Chengfeng was on their side. Second, it was impossible for Gu Chengfeng to come and go as he pleased under the watchful eyes of the Dragon Shadow Guard without any ability. No matter how tightly he sealed it, Gu Chengfeng could still see it if he wanted to. Alright, then I'll make another trip. I was planning to return to the Marquis estate after delivering your food. Gu Chengfeng accepted the pouch. When food was mentioned, his gaze swept over the desserts on the table. That girl wasn't good looking, but the desserts she made were exceptionally exquisite. Thank you, Xiao Lulang said sincerely. If you're sincere about thanking me, then give me one of your desserts, Gu Chengfeng said. No. Xiao Lulang heartlessly refused. Gu Chengfeng. Gu Chengfeng used his qinggong to leave the examination courtyard. Because of the anger in his heart, he didn't even show himself when he went to Jadewater Alley. He directly threw the pouch that Xiao Lulang had him bring back on Gu Jiao's windowsill. Gu Jiao didn't need to guess to know that Gu Chengfeng had brought it over. Gu Jiao threw the medicine bottle into the air. As expected, Gu Chengfeng nimbly spun around and caught the hair restorer. He landed in front of Gu Jiao's window and said angrily, You're just blindly throwing it like that. You're not afraid of giving it to the wrong person. Humph. Saying this, he took Gu Qinglin's medicine and plunged into the endless night. Gu Jiao took out the note from the pouch. You already know the contents of the imperial edict. Do not act rashly. Wait for my return. When she read the first two sentences, Gu Jiao's heart didn't waver at all. But when she read the last sentence, the corners of her lips slightly curved into a beautiful arc. Wait for my return. Gu Jiao read the last 4 words. Her elbows were on the windowsill as she rested her chin on her hand and looked into the distance. Why was she a bit happy? Gu Jiao couldn't suppress the smile on her lips. Hey. Gu Chengfeng suddenly came back. He was hanging upside down from the roof beam, his head hanging outside Gu Jiao's window. He was almost face to face with Gu Jiao. The difference was that Gu Jiao's face was facing up, while his face was upside down. Gu Jiao looked at this uninvited guest who was ruining the atmosphere. What? Gu Chengfeng said. There's something I forgot to tell you. Your husband was poisoned in the examination courtyard. Gu Jiao's expression turned cold. Fortunately, I was there early just in time. Before Gu Chengfeng could finish speaking, Gu Jiao had already jumped out of the window with one hand. Gu Chengfeng was stunned. I haven't finished the second half of my sentence. With Gu Jiao's current skills, sneaking into the examination courtyard wasn't a big problem. Although the examination courtyard was big, the layout was simple. The examiners all lived in the Jingyi Pavilion. Xiao Lulang had just finished washing up and was only wearing a thin inner garment. He extinguished the oil lamp on the table and was about to go to sleep when someone gently knocked on the door. "Who is it?" Xiao Lulang came to the door, removed the bolt, and gently opened the door. It wasn't any of his colleagues outside the door. It was a petite figure dressed in black, wearing a gaudy mask. The pair of eyes under the mask seemed to have gathered the light of the Milky Way all the way to the darkest part of his heart. He looked at her in a daze, and also looked at himself in her eyes in a daze. He forgot to react for a moment. "You two go over there and take a look." A guard's voice sounded not far away. Xiao Lulang quickly stretched out his hand and pulled her in, knocking her head into his embrace. He hugged her with one hand and quickly closed the door with the other. Almost at the same time that he locked the door, the guard outside also arrived. "You two go over there and take a look. You two search this courtyard. You come with me." "Yes." Gu Jiao was tightly held in Xiao Liulang's arms. She didn't move, but blinked her large eyes and looked at him. Xiao Lulang raised his index finger and gently placed it on his lips. Gu Jiao understood. She didn't say anything, she understood. Achoo! But she couldn't hold back her sneeze. Her mask was knocked askew. "What's that noise?" A guard walked towards Xiao Liulang's room. "It's me." Xiao Liulang's tone was normal as he said. "It's so late. Is Lord Xiao still awake?" The guard asked outside the door. Xiao Lulang hugged Gu Jiao, not daring to move a single step. "I was asleep, but you guys woke me up again." "Sorry." The guard outside the door cupped his hands. "It's our brothers who found a fainted guard near the kitchen. It seems like he has been unconscious for a long time. We don't know if there are thieves who have snuck in. We are currently investigating under orders, so we ask Lord Xiao to be patient." Gu Jiao took off the askew mask. He hugged her so tightly that she couldn't pull away, so she simply buried her little head in his chest. Xiao Liulang's heart skipped a beat, and his breathing became heavy. He calmed himself down and said, "I didn't hear anything here. You guys should quickly go and take a look at the other lords." "Yes, sir," the guard replied. "Big brother, there's nothing here. There's nothing there either. Let's go." The guards left Jingyi Pavilion one after another. Xiao Lulang carefully listened to their footsteps. After confirming that the last guard had walked far away, the surroundings became quiet again. However, Xiao Lulang didn't move, and neither did Gu Jiao. There was no light in the room. Only a thin ray of moonlight shone in through the paper window. There was almost no light. The night was quiet. He hugged her, hearing each other's breathing and the sound of his own heart beating like a drum. "That guard wasn't knocked out by me. I didn't hit anyone," Gu Jiao said. Xiao Lulang made a sound of agreement and gently let go of her arm. The night covered the red color of his cheeks. "It's so late. Why did you come?" "Gu Chengfeng said that someone poisoned you." Gu Jiao's fingertips were already on his pulse when she said this. "I didn't eat," Xiao Lulang said. "That guard who fainted should be the one who originally brought me dinner." "There's no problem with your pulse?" Gu Jiao asked. "Is the food that was drugged still there?" Xiao Lulang groped his way to the table in the dark and took out a match to light the oil lamp. "It's been taken away. I left some chopped green onions that were drugged." As he spoke, he took out a small porcelain bottle from his bag. Gu Jiao poured out the chopped green onions inside. After carefully examining it, her face darkened. "It's arsenic. Someone actually poisoned her husband with arsenic." Her little fists indicated that they were itchy. Xiao Lulang looked at her fierce little expression and couldn't help but laugh. He raised his hand and gently rubbed the top of her head. "I'm fine. I wasn't poisoned this time. The other person should have guessed that we were exposed and won't make a move for a while. At least they wouldn't make a move in the tribute court. You came here in the middle of the night just for this?" In his eyes, this was an insignificant matter. From the moment he returned to the capital, he had already expected that the road ahead would be filled with thorns. "I will find the culprit," Gu Jiao said seriously. "Okay." Xiao Lulang smiled and stroked the strand of hair on her head that had been blown up by the wind. It was very strange. He wouldn't have done this in the past. They had always been husband and wife in name, but they had never interacted with each other. They were more like guests living under the same roof. They had their own territory and didn't interfere with each other's business. Just when did their boundaries start to blur? Did they start to involve each other in their plans? Xiao Lulang lowered his head and laughed. What are you laughing at? Gu Jiao asked. Nothing. Xiao Lulang shook his head. He just couldn't help but laugh. As for what he was laughing at, he seemed to know but also didn't. By the way, what was written in concubine Jing's imperial edict? Gu Jiao skipped the question of how he knew the contents of the edict. Xiao Lulang seemed to finally understand what he was laughing at. He was happy. When he was with her, it seemed that he never had to worry about her asking him difficult questions. Of course, he wouldn't purposely ask her about things she didn't want to talk about. This wasn't the cautiousness of someone who understood each other well. It was a natural tacit understanding between the two of them. Xiao Lulang said, "That's an imperial edict left behind by the late emperor. It contains very important matters." Saying it was important was an understatement. It was something that could shake the entire court. Gu Jiao asked, "Does it have anything to do with Grandaunt?" Xiao Lulang nodded. Yes. It seemed that it had something to do with Grandaunt. Otherwise, concubine Jing wouldn't have used it as a trump card for so many years. Gu Jiao continued to guess. Did the late emperor agree to Grandaunt holding court behind the curtain? If the late emperor had agreed, then Grandaunt wouldn't have had to suffer so much criticism. The fact that concubine Jing had this imperial edict in her hands was undoubtedly a great obstacle to Grandaunt's path as regent. Xiao Lulang shook his head. No. Gu Jiao changed the direction of her guess. So it's to prevent Grandaunt from interfering with the court? That's not it either. Xiao Lulang shook his head again. Gu Jiao made a strange sound. It can't really be an imperial edict to bury Grandaunt with the late emperor, can it? Xiao Lulang fell silent. Seeing him like this, Gu Jiao had an answer in her heart. The imperial edict that the late emperor had issued before his death was indeed for Grandaunt to be buried with the late emperor. This made Gu Jiao even more confused. But why would concubine Jing keep an imperial edict for Grandaunt to be buried with the late emperor? She and Grandaunt were at loggerheads and couldn't wait to get rid of her. Why would she hide an imperial edict? Xiao Liulang's gaze turned deep. Because Grandaunt isn't the only concubine to be buried with the late emperor. Concubine Jing is also buried with the late emperor. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online can be found here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964226/111014916. HTML Genius memorized this website's URL in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. Chapter 384. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. So concubine Jing's name is on the imperial edict as well. Gu Jiao came to a realization. No wonder she wanted to steal it and hide it. Xiao Lulang grunted in agreement. First, it's to save her life. Second, it's to hold on to her final trump card. Gu Jiao rested her chin on her hands and said thoughtfully, Grandaunt won't be threatened by anyone. Even if she really did take out the imperial edict and say, if you don't agree to my terms, I'll announce it to the world and take you down with me. Grandaunt won't give in. Xiao Lulang nodded. So her most dangerous move is to take Grandaunt down with her. Gu Jiao slapped the table. That bad woman. Xiao Lulang looked at her angry expression. Although he shouldn't have, a trace of a smile flashed through his eyes. Of course, his smile faded when he thought of Grandaunt's situation. Seeing the imperial edict was something that had happened when he was young. Moreover, it wasn't something he cared about at the time, so that memory had long since been submerged in the river of his memories. If Gu Chengfeng hadn't brought it up, he might not have thought about it for the rest of his life. We have to steal the imperial edict back. They couldn't let concubine Jing hold on to such a ticking time bomb. Gu Jiao didn't care if concubine Jing died or not, but great-aunt couldn't go to hell with her. Xiao Luleng said. Before that, don't push her too far. Otherwise, she might impulsively take great-aunt down with her. Gu Jiao finally understood what her husband meant when he said not to act rashly. With concubine Jing's current condition, it wasn't appropriate for them to provoke her. That woman had already gone crazy. Who knew what she would do in a fit of anger? Sigh. Gu Jiao sighed. She placed her hands on the table and her head drooped, resting on the back of her hands. Xiao Luleng couldn't help but raise his hand and touch her fluffy little head. It won't take long. Yes. Gu Jiao nodded. She believed him. He trusted him so much that he didn't have to ask him about his plans. Speaking of which, she straightened her body in contemplation. Xiao Luleng calmly retracted his hand. The soft feeling of her hair still remained in his palm, and he gently stroked it with his fingertips. Gu Jiao didn't notice his small action of reminiscing. She looked at him doubtfully and asked, what kind of person was the previous emperor? Why did he want great-aunt and grand concubine Jing to die with him? Xiao Luleng paused. His first reaction was to get rid of the mother and keep the child, but after thinking about it carefully, he wasn't sure if that was the case. It was hard for him to describe what kind of emperor the previous emperor was. The previous emperor had already passed away when he was born. All of his knowledge of the previous emperor came from the previous emperor's documents and rumors. But judging from the previous emperor's arrangements before his death, he was a man of means. Perhaps the reason he buried Empress Dowager Zhuang and old concubine Jing with him was because he saw the influence they had on the new emperor, and was worried that the power of the imperial court would fall to someone else. Or maybe the previous emperor had other plans. An emperor's thoughts were deeper than the sea. Who could guess? For example, he didn't understand why Princess Xinyang had the shadow dragon guards. In the end, Xiao Luleng could only say to Gu Jiao, the truth will come out one day. He didn't say that he didn't know. Of course he didn't know. But if she wanted to know, he would find the answer. Xiao Luleng looked at the endless night sky. It's getting late. You should go back and rest. Gu Jiao nodded. Yes, then I'll come see you tomorrow night. Xiao Luleng looked at her and didn't refuse. Okay. After Gu Jiao left, Xiao Luleng turned off the light and lay on the thin bed. The box of snacks that Gu Jiao had Gu Chengfeng bring him was placed on the bedside table. The night was very quiet, but his thoughts weren't calm. A certain someone was disobediently running around in his mind. It took him a lot of effort to regain control of his mind. He began to think about the imperial edict. The imperial edict was left behind by the previous emperor. Even the current emperor couldn't disobey it. Although Empress Dowager Zhuang and the Zhuang family had great power, they weren't strong enough to compete with the previous emperor's edict. As a woman of the imperial harem, Empress Dowager Zhuang had done too many things that the secular world wouldn't tolerate. The first thing she bore the brunt of was holding court behind the curtain. The previous emperor's subordinates didn't make things difficult for Empress Dowager Zhuang for two reasons. First, the Empress Dowager did have the means to suppress them. Second, the previous emperor couldn't attend court due to his illness in the last days of his reign. Moreover, the Lu family was ambitious. The previous emperor had no choice but to drive the tiger to chase the wolf. He appointed the virtuous empress as regent. The previous emperor didn't have time to remove the empress's regent before he passed away. Xiao Luleng guessed that the previous emperor might have thought that since he had left the imperial edict for the empress to be buried with him, it didn't matter whether she was removed or not. Unfortunately, the imperial edict was stolen by concubine Jing. The virtuous empress was promoted to the position of regent by the previous emperor. After the new emperor ascended the throne, she continued to hold court behind the curtain, so the previous emperor's subordinates didn't dislike her as much. But as soon as the imperial edict was issued, The previous emperor's subordinates would bite Empress Dowager Zhuang into the imperial mausoleum like hungry wolves. Thus, Gu Jiao was right. The imperial edict couldn't continue to fall into concubine Jing's hands. They had to find a way to steal it back and destroy it. But with the dragon shadow guards around, it would be difficult for them to succeed. The dragon shadow guards. Xiao Lulang narrowed his eyes in the darkness. The next night, Gu Jiao really did come. She brought Xiao Liulang's favorite spicy beef. She skewered the beef with bamboo sticks and put it in a jar. The two of them sat in the room and ate the skewers. "Shall I come again tomorrow?" Gu Jiao asked before she left. Xiao Lulang chuckled quietly. "I can go back after the exam tomorrow. There's no need to come again." Gu Jiao. Oh. She really wanted to come. It would be fun to eat skewers with him in the middle of the night. Xiao Lulang was an invigilator and didn't participate in marking the papers. After the exam, he packed his things and left the examination hall. It wasn't too late. He first went to the Hanlin Academy to take care of the work he had left behind in the past 3 days. Ever since his confrontation with Grand Tutor Zhuang outside the Hanlin Academy, not many people in the Hanlin Academy dared to pick a fight with him. Everyone knew that he was there to invigilate the exam, not play around. Thus, no one dared to assign him any work. It was nothing more than sorting out the classics. He spent the whole afternoon sorting out the scriptures and sent them to Scholar Han. When he came back from Scholar Han's office, he ran into Ning Ziyuan poking his head out of his office. "What's up?" he walked up and asked. Ning Ziyuan turned around and said, "I heard that you were back. How was it? Did the invigilation go well?" Xiao Lulang recalled the scene of him eating skewers with a certain someone last night. He couldn't help but laugh. "It went well." Ning Ziyuan looked at him strangely. You're laughing strangely." Xiao Lulang pressed down the corner of his lips and restrained the smile on his face. He said sternly, "You came to find me just to say hello?" When it came to business, Ning Ziyuan didn't continue to joke with him. "Well." Ning Ziyuan scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "I brought my family to the capital. It's just your sister-in-law. Your sister-in-law asked me to bring my friends over. I don't have many friends in the capital, so I wanted to ask if you were free." When he asked this question, he was actually very nervous. Although he and Xiao Lulang were the top 3 in the same subject, their identities and experiences were very different. He was also someone who was favored by the emperor, but the emperor treated him differently than he treated Xiao Lulang. Of course, the main reason was that their abilities were different. He was self-aware and didn't feel any jealousy. It was just that he felt a little inferior. Not only was Xiao Lulang appreciated by the emperor, but he also heard that he had a good relationship with the Empress Dowager. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to suppress Grand Tutor Zhuang. Being friends with such a person, was he trying to climb up the social ladder? Besides, he didn't have much money. The house was rented and his family was quite poor. Thinking of this, Ning Ziyuan didn't wait for Xiao Liulang's reply and hurriedly refused on behalf of Xiao Lulang. "But the Hanlin Academy has been quite busy lately. Neither of us should have time." "Okay," Xiao Lulang said. "Huh." Ning Ziyuan was surprised. Xiao Lulang said, "I'll go back and ask when my wife is free. We'll visit together." Ning Ziyuan was dumbfounded. Ah. Did he just agree? Gu Jiao came to the tribute compound twice to see Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang more or less learned about the current situation from Gu Jiao, and decided to go to the palace. "Your Majesty, Xiao Xiozhuan requests an audience." In the imperial study, Eunuch Wei reported in a low voice. The emperor's hand that was reading the memorials paused. He pressed his tired head and said, "He hasn't been here for a few days." Eunuch Wei hurriedly said, "Xiao Xiozhuan went to the tribute compound to invigilate the exams for 3 days. Ah, the exams for the 6 ministries. The emperor had almost forgotten about this. The exams for the 6 ministries were usually held in June. This year, due to the visit of the Liang Kingdom's envoy, the court exams were delayed by a month, let alone the exams for the 6 ministries. Not all officials participated in this kind of exam. It was only a random test hosted by the Hanlin Academy, but it was also very strict." "Let him in," the emperor said. "Yes." Eunuch Wei went to the door and let him in. Xiao Lulang cupped his hands and bowed. This humble subject greets your majesty. The emperor picked up a memorial and said calmly, "How did you find time to come to my place today?" Xiao Lulang cupped his hands and said, "This humble subject has something to report." "What is it?" the emperor asked. Xiao Lulang said seriously, "On the first day of invigilating the exams at the tribute compound, someone put arsenic in this humble subject's dinner." The emperor's brows furrowed. This humble subject originally left behind the evidence, but the weather was too hot, and the evidence was already spoiled. Although he said this, Xiao Lulang still took out a small porcelain bottle from his sleeve. Eunuch Wei went forward and took the small porcelain bottle. He pulled out the cork, and the smell of rotten green onions came to his nose. Eunuch Wei quickly covered his nose. Since it was like this, it was not good to sully the emperor's eyes. The emperor asked, "How do you know it was arsenic?" Xiao Lulang naturally would not say that Gu Jiao had come to the tribute compound. Sneaking into the tribute compound without permission was a capital offense. Even if the emperor would not punish Gu Jiao, why waste the emperor's good impression of Gu Jiao? Xiao Lulang said, "Your Majesty, have you forgotten that Jiao Jiao is a doctor? When she was in the countryside, there were rats at home. Jiao Jiao used arsenic to make some rat medicine. This humble subject even helped her." This was a lie. Gu Jiao would not let Xiao Lulang touch any dangerous items. However, Xiao Lulang had learned the old chancellor's theory of thick black officialdom, so he said it without changing his expression. Xiao Lulang continued, "That person disguised himself as an imperial bodyguard to send me food. I saw that he looked unfamiliar, so he was not the imperial bodyguard from this morning and afternoon. I kept an eye on him, and only then did I realize that the food had been tampered with." The emperor frowned suspiciously. "Who would actually go to the tribute compound to make a move on you?" The tribute compound was heavily guarded, so it was impossible for an ordinary assassin to sneak in, let alone poison Xiao Liulang's food. The emperor stared at Xiao Lulang. "I have not heard of such news from the tribute compound." Xiao Lulang did not avoid the emperor's scrutiny. This humble subject did not say anything. This humble subject did not know who the culprit was, so this humble subject did not dare to make a big deal out of it. This humble subject was afraid that the culprit would act out of desperation. The emperor thought that this was reasonable. He looked at Xiao Lulang and said, "You can go back first. This matter, I will investigate it thoroughly." Xiao Lulang cupped his hands. This humble subject will take his leave. For the sake of caution, after Xiao Lulang left, the emperor called for the imperial physician and asked him to check the chopped green onions. The chopped green onions were picked out from the egg drop soup, so it had already gone bad. However, the imperial physician still found arsenic on it. Replying to Your Majesty, "It is indeed arsenic," the imperial physician said. The emperor's gaze turned cold. "I know. You can go back." That night, the emperor called the chief imperial bodyguard of the tribute compound and asked him if he had found anyone suspicious in the tribute compound. The chief imperial bodyguard said, "On the first day of the examination, someone seemed to have snuck in and knocked out a guard. He even stripped the guard of his clothes. Unfortunately, this subordinate was incompetent and could not catch him." This matched up with Xiao Liulang's story. The emperor ordered a thorough investigation. Unexpectedly, before the poisoning case of the tribute compound could come to light, something else happened to Xiao Lulang the next day. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty, this is bad. Miss Gu and Xiao Xiuzhua are injured." Eunuch Wei anxiously rushed into the imperial study. The emperor put down the booklet in his hand. "Where are they?" Eunuch Wei said worriedly, "At the medical center. Miracle Hands Hall." This humble subject saw Eunuch Qin rushing out of the palace and asked what was wrong. Only then did Eunuch Qin tell this humble subject that something had happened to Miss Gu and Xiao Xiuzhua. Xiao Lulang was an official that the emperor favored. Gu Jiao was even more important. In the emperor's heart, her weight was no different from his own child. The emperor did not care about approving the booklet. He changed into casual clothes and rushed to the medical center with Eunuch Wei. In the side room of the small courtyard, Gu Jiao was lying unconscious on the bed. Xiao Lulang was guarding by the bed. His left hand was wrapped in gauze and hung around his neck. There were bruises at the corner of his mouth and forehead. This was the first time the emperor had seen the two of them injured in front of him. He was stunned. What happened? Your Majesty. Xiao Lulang stood up and wanted to salute him. However, he looked awkwardly at his bandaged arm and bowed instead. No need to be so polite. The emperor raised his hand and came to the bed. He looked at Gu Jiao, who was unconscious with her eyes closed. From the corner of his eye, he saw a pile of blood-stained clothes in the basket at the side. His breathing tightened. Xiao Lulang said in low spirits. Dr. Song has seen her. He said that she lost a lot of blood. The emperor's eyes became cold. His gaze fell on Xiao Liulang's arm. What happened to you? Xiao Lulang lowered his eyes and said, This humble subject is fine. It's just that my arm was dislocated. It has already been reconnected. A dislocated arm was fine? How could a weak scholar withstand this kind of pain? The emperor's face turned ugly. What's going on? Where did you get injured? Xiao Lulang said with a pained face. It was near Chang'an Avenue. This humble subject met an assassin on the way home from Hanlin Academy. Jiao Jiao happened to come to Hanlin Academy to pick me up. We fought with the assassin. Jiao Jiao was no match for him, and was seriously injured. Later, Jiao Jiao used a hidden weapon to destroy the assassin's mask. The assassin then escaped. The emperor asked, Did you see what the assassin looked like? Xiao Lulang shook his head. It was too chaotic at the time. This humble subject didn't see his facial features clearly. I only remember that he had a tattoo on his face. The emperor hurriedly asked, What tattoo? It looks like. Xiao Lulang tried hard to recall and said, Forget it, this humble subject might have seen wrongly. The emperor frowned and said, There's no harm in saying it. Xiao Lulang hesitated for a moment and said, It looks like a tortoise, and also like a snake. Tortoise body and snake tail. Black tortoise. The tattoo of the Dragon Shadow Guard. The Dragon Shadow Guard was a death warrior, but not every death warrior was qualified to become a Dragon Shadow Guard. Back then, the previous emperor bought a large number of death warriors from the Yen Kingdom. When he bought them back, they were already strong enough. However, the previous emperor was not satisfied with their strength. He invited an expert to train the death warriors with all his strength on this basis. In the end, there were more than 100 death warriors, but only a dozen or so Dragon Shadow Guards emerged. Some of the Dragon Shadow Guards died in the mission, and the previous emperor left him the youngest Dragon Shadow Guards. When he first saw them, he was shocked by the black tortoise tattoo on their faces. It was said that the previous emperor had it tattooed to distinguish the Dragon Shadow Guards from ordinary death warriors. No one else in the world had such a tattoo. The emperor's mood instantly became complicated. Are you sure you didn't see wrongly? Xiao Lulang thought for a moment. This humble subject is not sure. This humble subject only took a quick glance at the time. This humble subject might have seen wrongly. The emperor closed his eyes. He must have seen wrongly. The Dragon Shadow Guards were now in the hands of Consort Jing's mother. How could she have sent someone to assassinate Xiao Lulang? Although she didn't want to be close to Empress Dowager Zhuang's faction, strictly speaking, Xiao Lulang wasn't part of Empress Dowager Zhuang's faction. Xiao Lulang was a subject that she had personally promoted. He was the son of Heaven's disciple and one of her people. Consort Jing had no reason to deal with Xiao Lulang. The emperor waited in the room for a while longer. Halfway through, Dr. Song came over to change Gu Jiao's medicine, but Gu Jiao didn't wake up. The emperor watched as basins of blood were brought out from behind the screen. He couldn't bear to continue watching. On the way back to the palace, he didn't say a word. Your Majesty. Eunuch Wei wanted to remind him that they had arrived at the palace. However, the emperor suddenly sighed. Consort Jing's mother wouldn't do that, right? Eunuch Wei was startled. What was going on? Did His Majesty suspect that the person who tried to assassinate Xiao Lulang was sent by the imperial concubine? The Dragon Shadow Guards usually wore masks, so Eunuch Wei didn't know that they had tattoos on their faces. It definitely wasn't her. The emperor didn't know if he was talking to Eunuch Wei or himself. How could Eunuch Wei dare to answer? This is a matter between you and your son. I can't get involved. He remembered how His Majesty and the Empress Dowager seemed to have drifted apart in the same way. It seemed that His Majesty wasn't so close to the Empress Dowager overnight. Gradually, His Majesty began to quarrel with the Empress Dowager, blaming every little thing on the Empress Dowager. Sometimes, Eunuch Wei felt wronged for the Empress Dowager. Every dog has its day, and now it's concubine Jing's turn? Your Majesty, do you have a disease that will drive your mother to her grave? Cough. Eunuch Wei covered his mouth before he could open it. The emperor got off the carriage. His thoughts were a bit messy. There were two voices in his head. One was telling him that Xiao Lulang wouldn't lie to him, and the other was telling him that Consort Jing wouldn't betray him. Who is it? Eunuch Wei suddenly asked. What's wrong? The emperor asked. Eunuch Wei pointed to the end of the imperial garden. This servant just saw a sneaky figure go that way. Wasn't that the direction of the room? Perhaps someone was in a hurry to go to the toilet. The emperor wouldn't go to see a servant go to the toilet, but for some reason he felt a bit uneasy. He turned around after taking a step and went in the direction of the room. It was a room, after all, so the emperor didn't really go in. He just watched from a distance. Unexpectedly, he heard a familiar voice. What? You failed again? To think that you're a dragon shadow guard. How can you not even kill a scholar who doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken? This was Consort Jing's voice. Consort Jing said that she had failed again. Concubine Jing had even said that he was a scholar without the strength to truss a chicken. He must have heard wrong. The voice continued. Does His Majesty know that you're such a piece of trash? His Majesty didn't give you guys to me to just eat and wait for death. It's just killing a little cripple, not some martial arts expert. Is that all you dragon shadow guards are capable of? If I had known, I would have hired a few Jianghu assassins. They'd be more efficient than you guys. It was impossible for the emperor to lie and say that the voice didn't come from Consort Jing's mother. He only felt a chill rise from the bottom of his feet to the top of his head. Digression. When a beauty makes a move, you'll know if it's real or not. Happy Christmas Eve. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online can be found here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/110990765. HTML Genius memorized this website's address. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. Chapter 385. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. The emperor didn't want to believe it at first, but every sentence, every word, and every fact matched up with Xiao Liulong's experience. How hateful. He had such a pure and innocent heart, but in the end, he was betrayed like this. Just listen to what his imperial mother had said. Every single one of her words was like a knife stabbing into his heart. The emperor's heart was bleeding. It felt like someone had fished him out of an ice cave and stabbed him a few more times. He staggered and almost fell. Your Majesty. Eunuch Wei didn't dare to make a sound, and could only reach out to support him. To be honest, he was also scared out of his wits. He never expected that he and the emperor would overhear concubine Jing's words. Nor did he expect the contents to be so explosive. From concubine Jing's tone, it sounded like she was the one who had sent people to kill Xiao Lulang twice. That made sense. Apart from the legendary dragon shadow guard, who else would have the ability to sneak into the examination compound and cause trouble? Eunuch Wei was mistaken. Although the examination compound was heavily guarded, there were still many experts who could sneak in. But since concubine Jing admitted that she had failed again, then she must have been the one behind the incident. What was worse was that the conversation inside hadn't stopped. Instead, it was getting more and more shocking. "All right, Your Highness, don't be angry. Be careful not to harm your health." It was Granny Kai's voice. "It's not the Dragon Shadow Guard's fault. Those people are too cunning. Otherwise, how could His Majesty be bewitched by them? In this servant's opinion, what little divine doctor, what Xiao Zhuang Yuan, they were all obtained by bewitching His Majesty. But how could His Majesty be bewitched by them? Did they drug His Majesty as well?" It was concubine Jing's voice. If the emperor was only angry at the beginning, then he was a little confused at this point. What did she mean by drug him as well? Mama Kai's voice continued. "You're not the only one who can buy this medicine. Maybe the pharmacist from the Yin Kingdom sold it to someone else." Old concubine Jing's voice rang out. "This kind of medicine is extremely rare. It's not something that can be sold just because he says so. Those herbs can't be found in the Zhao nation. Money makes the world go round. Your Highness, you're still underestimating them." "You mean, His Majesty values Xiao Lulang and the Gu clan's daughter so much, because Xiao Lulang and the Gu clan's daughter also drugged His Majesty?" "Your Highness, you have personally experienced the effects of the white medicine and the black medicine. Think about how His Majesty reconciled with you after that incident, and how he became enemies with the Empress Dowager. Wasn't it all because of these two medicines?" The emperor could not hear what was said after that. His head was buzzing, his vision turned black, and the world spun. When he finally regained consciousness, he found himself sitting on the ground. Eunuch Wei knelt beside him and shook him anxiously. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Your Majesty!" The emperor was drenched in cold sweat. He said woodenly, "Imperial Mother, They left. This servant didn't see them come out. They probably left through the back door." Eunuch Wei's eyes were red and his voice was choked with sobs. "Your Majesty, you scared this servant to death. Help us up." The emperor dazedly offered his arm to Eunuch Wei. Eunuch Wei wiped his tears and helped the emperor up. "Your Majesty." The emperor was like a puppet that had lost its soul. He turned around with a dazed expression. "Return to Pure Flower's palace." Not long after the emperor and Eunuch Wei left, two figures walked out from behind the fake mountain near the guest quarters. Both of them were wearing the clothes of eunuchs, but they were taller than normal eunuchs. One of the eunuchs, Xiao Lulang, spoke up. "You changed the lines without thinking." The second eunuch, Gu Qingfeng, curled his lips. "When did I? I read the lines you gave me." Xiao Lulang glanced at the script book in Gu Qingfeng's hands and expressionlessly said, "Little cripple wasn't written in there." Gu Qingfeng. Cough, "I was improvising. The effect was more unique." Xiao Lulang. "I'll deduct a bottle of hair growth medicine from you." Gu Qingfeng. "This is too much. Did you think it was easy for him to agree to impersonate a female voice? He even had to play two roles for each person. He didn't even relent when that lass told him to imitate a female voice. How could this brat's heart be even blacker than that lass's? No, that lass was truly black-hearted. This brat was completely black-hearted. He looks pure and harmless, but he has more tricks up his sleeve than anyone else." Xiao Lulang calmly said, "All right, I won't talk to you anymore. I'm going back to take care of Gu Jiao." Gu Qingfeng exploded. "Does she need you to take care of her? It's not like she's really injured. She's still alive and kicking. She can even climb trees to catch sparrows." The emperor collapsed after returning to Pure Flower's palace. He didn't faint, but rather was too exhausted to support his body. He lay on the spacious dragon bed, his face full of struggle and despair. Some things wouldn't have had this kind of effect if they had been done earlier or later. The timing was just right. The effects of the black medicine on Empress Dowager Zhuang were dissipating, while the effects on Grand Concubine Jing were gradually increasing. Xiao Lulang calculated the extent of the emperor's acceptance. He cut in from the simplest and most convincing matter, then ended with the most shocking and painful truth. It was as if a knife had sliced open the emperor's heart, causing his unbearable past to flow out along with his blood. Of course, the emperor was still the emperor. Although he wasn't as suspicious as the previous emperor, he was still the ruler of a country. He wouldn't convict someone with just a few words. Xiao Liulong's words revealed a few very important pieces of information. Assassination, Shadow Dragon Guards, drugging, Yin Kingdom's pharmacists. The Shadow Dragon Guards were tools for murder. They didn't have the thoughts of a normal person, so it was impossible to learn the truth from their mouths. However, among so many truths, as long as one was proven, people would believe everything. Summon Marquis Xianping, the emperor said. Your Majesty, Marquis Xianping went to Fengdu Mountain to visit Princess Xinyang. Have you forgotten? Eunuch Wei asked. Marquis Xianping was an important official of the court. It wasn't a big deal for him to leave the capital for a day, but he still had to report to the court if he really went too far. We have indeed forgotten. The emperor felt that his brain was getting worse and worse. He pressed down on his aching head and said to Eunuch Wei, "Summon Gu Chao then." Understood. Eunuch Wei replied. Wait, the emperor called out. Eunuch Wei bowed. What other orders do you have, Your Majesty? The emperor wanted to say something, but stopped himself. He waved his hand. Forget it. Summon Gu Chao first. Understood. Eunuch Wei sent 2 palace experts to invite the old marquis over as quickly as possible. The old marquis didn't know why the emperor had summoned him. He thought that the emperor was going to make things difficult for him, because of his relationship with Grand Concubine Jing. He swore that he and Grand Concubine Jing had already severed all ties, and had no more contact. We ask you, where in Zhao Kingdom can you find a pharmacist from Yin Kingdom? This was the emperor's first question. The emperor's mind was in a mess, and he even skipped the basic pleasantries. The old marquis didn't understand why the emperor was asking this, but he still answered truthfully. There is an underground dojo in the capital, and there is a pharmacist from Yin Kingdom there. Does Your Majesty want to invite a pharmacist? The emperor said dejectedly, No need. Go buy 2 kinds of medicine for me, black medicine and white medicine. By the way, what are they used for? Who has bought them before? Understood. Strange, what black medicine and white medicine? Despite his doubts, the old marquis still left to carry out the order. Pharmacists from Yin Kingdom had a very high status in the underground dojo, and most people wouldn't be able to see them. It was fortunate that the emperor had asked the old marquis for help. The old marquis returned quickly. Your Majesty, I didn't manage to buy them. The pharmacist said that these 2 kinds of medicine are used to control people. One makes people feel good about the person who put it in them, while the other makes people feel disgusted. They've already sold them out, and it's not convenient for him to reveal who he sold them to. It's a rule of the trade. However, he did tell me that not many people buy them. First, they're expensive, and second, the ingredients are very hard to come by. He might not be able to gather all of them even after several years. He's only made less than 10 pills this year, and all of them were bought by a customer. 1. Therefore, it was impossible for both parties to have drugged him. It was obvious which party it was. However, the emperor still wanted to give the old concubine one last chance before seeing the medicine. He didn't want to believe that the love he had received all these years was an illusion. The old marquis said, The pharmacist said that you'll have to wait a few years before you can buy them. Maybe even 10 years. You may leave. The emperor cut him off. The old marquis was startled. Sensing that something was wrong with the emperor's mood, he asked worriedly, What's wrong, Your Majesty? The emperor murmured, I'm fine. Don't tell anyone about this. The old marquis suppressed his doubts and cupped his hands in salute. Your servant obeys. After the old marquis left, the emperor called over a palace expert and handed him a token. Go and call a shadow dragon guard over. Don't let anyone find out. Yes. The expert took the emperor's token and left. The emperor had given the shadow dragon guard to the old concubine to better protect her, but that didn't mean that he was no longer the guard's master. The shadow dragon guard was the first to obey the late emperor, and after the late emperor passed away, they were the first to obey him. His orders were higher than the old concubine's. The shadow dragon guard quickly came over. The emperor asked, Have you tried to assassinate the young divine doctor? The shadow dragon guard didn't answer. The emperor laughed at himself. That's right, the Shadow Dragon guard couldn't answer at all, so he didn't show the guard a portrait of the young divine doctor. It was fine as long as he could carry out orders. The emperor looked at the Shadow Dragon guard and said coldly, "Bring all the medicine in the nunnery to me." Digression. Secretly adding a new chapter, the latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found online here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/110985606. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. That you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.